We are live because I forgot that there's a way to put us in the stream starting soon.
That's
So
hilarious.
we are
Oh,
we are we are actually live.
well, they have an insight into the shit that we talk about before the show, I guess.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely
nerd out about
riveting.
stuff.
Yes.
Huh.
But we're not
Oh,
live. Wait, are can you see us on Twitch? I think I
Let me
see
see.
us. Yeah.
I could. We're
Yeah.
on Twitch for sure.
Yeah, YouTube is waiting until 10:15. So, we'll just talk a little shit. Oh wait, it is 10:15.
There it is.
So
Now,
it should
now
be
yeah,
So it's
yeah
live?
any second
it's,
now.
it's
It
pulling up.
says it's
Yeah, it's up. It's up.
Okay, very good. Very good.
yeah. I mean, I might as well finish that thought. Shin Ultraman truly, it did things and homaged the old Ultraman stuff in
Oh,
ways that comic book movies should be doing.
I don't know what that means, but I'm excited to
It
see
was
it.
it was insane. So one of the things that really stuck with me is you know how a lot of times in like old timey superhero shows, it's very clearly like a toy on a string flying through the
Yeah,
air.
yeah.
They used to do that with Ultraman, but what they did in Shin Ultraman was they actually made that a style, and they made it like how he flies. So when he flies, he's stiff as a board, just. But then
That's
he'll
so
do a trick
goofy.
while he's flying, and he just like he'll go and it's completely vertical, right, or horizontal, and then he'll flip, but it's a complete spin, and it's
That's
like it's insane.
that's so goofy. I love it.
All
I want
right.
to see it.
Well, a different start to the show than typical, but as you can see, Tyler's not here, which puts me in charge of the tech stuff, and I forget things. That being said, though, we are very excited to be here to talk to you guys today. Hello, if you're watching us live. We do appreciate it when you guys do say hello in the chat. If you're hanging out with us, we've got a lot to talk about today. As you can see, if you were watching us, we do have an image of a manga section from a bookstore, and it is absolutely flourishing. And this image, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate the luck. Hopefully, we get off without a hitch. Although I guess technically we can't say that. But this is the best start we've probably had without Tyler around, given that everything seems to be working. That being said, so this week was a big week in comics, on comics Twitter, I should say. A post on social media on comics Twitter generating over 12 million views from Ursula K. La China at lava underscore Jigga, that juxtaposed an image of a manga section in a comic store with the graphic novel slash comics section. And I'll show you guys the trade section there, and you can see there's a big difference, right? Like the manga section is very organized; it's obviously massive, and then the graphic novel section is like this little sliver of the area, and the books are all different sizes, and they're hanging off the shelf, and it's almost like kind of messy, and Ursula accompanied this tweet and these images by saying it is actually so effing over, it never even started. That set off the whole of comics Twitter. As I said, 12 million views, 2.3K retweets,
Damn.
3.3K quote tweets, and 43K likes. And when you go through the comments section of this, you see a lot of people who I feel, and this is really one of the things that I want to talk about. There's a lot we're going to talk about as it relates to this, but a lot of people that I feel are relishing in an opportunity to dunk on the comics industry, to talk about how it's dying, and people almost seem happy about it. And that's the part that I don't get.
Yeah. When it popped up, I was confused. I'm like, what are we comparing? Because it's all comics at the end of the day. Like, people are reading. Why are we dissing one way or the other? And then, and the other thing was like, this is one place, right? This is a single sample size. So this is just maybe the way that this place has found its success or has found the audience that it's in likes more manga, so they're gonna buy. Like we went to Anyone Comics, right? And he gave us a very good breakdown. Dimitrios, the owner there, gave us a very good breakdown as to like how and why he buys certain books, why and how he places them. And it was not this necessarily. And there was this like uh um this doomsday sort of approach to putting these pictures together that I just frankly didn't understand.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's very weird, and you have a lot of people that are talking about. Look, yes, everybody on this podcast, most of our listeners, people that are fans of comics, understand that there are problems with the industry. I think we can all agree to that.
We all love dunking on comics. We love it.
I mean, it happens on this show pretty regularly, and I think it happens for reasons that are good in the sense that we're trying to point out things that the industry needs to change. But those are more back end problems. Those are more, the business side of comics. Yes, it's archaic. Yes, it feels like we are generations behind other industries as it relates to meeting people where they are, as it relates to technology, etc., right? But there are a lot of people who are focused on the content of comics versus manga. And this idea that because manga, quote unquote, hasn't gone woke, that it's a superior industry. Or that manga's superior. That manga has a wider spread of things that they're talking about, and that in manga they don't care about, politics or, quote unquote politics or anything like that. And I say that's bullshit. I say, yeah, there is a wider spread of content. Yeah, okay, fine. But because it hasn't gone woke, it's more successful? That's stupid. That's ridiculous.
I think there's like a misconception there as well, because there is a whole manga series about gun control and gun reform in Japan. There are manga about relationships with regards to marriages and sexuality. There's one, every so often a book will pop off in the Discord about like, how do we talk or should we buy a certain thing?
Right.
One called BL Metamorphosis, where a young girl and this older woman bond over BL, boy love, as like a genre, and then just form a friendship. But like that's discussing sexuality and gender perception, and like that from a content perspective is also just bullshit, right? Because you're gonna have people, and people are gonna want to talk about things, and those things can encompass anything, political or not.
Yeah, exactly. It runs the gamut. Like some of the stuff that, I've seen you share, some of the stuff that, just we've come across. Like these are deep stories. What was the one book we read? I think it was Goodbye Eerie with the guy.
Yes.
Like that was a deep story. There was a lot of like good stuff. Manga's not all Dragon Ball Z, And I feel like a lot of the time when these conversations come up, people are talking about One Piece or Dragon Ball or, Chainsaw Man or whatever, and they're saying, "Oh, these are non-woke, non-political books." All right, maybe so. I haven't read much of those in manga form by any means, so I can't really speak to that. I've watched a lot of Dragon Ball. Listen, Goku's not on his soapbox, but we have that equivalent, right? Isn't the equivalent of that the big two? Am I crazy? Like, the equivalent of Dragon Ball, the equivalent of One Piece, of Chainsaw Man would be the big two. The superhero comics that are, just your run-of-the-mill fun fare.
Stuff, yeah, teen boys would read.
Right. Exactly.
In an ideal market.
And then even with...
Ideal market.
Right. And then even within that, again, not an expert. even within that, you have your superhero stories that, do have Batman or Superman or are written by Tom King but have deeper themes. Just like I'm sure that exists in manga. It presents as this big action romp, but there's also important messages underlying, right? Like what was the one? It's really popular about. It's about transhumanism and people fusing with technology. It's really, really popular. It's one of the only
Comic?
things I've ever seen. It's a
comic?
manga. It's a manga and an anime. There's a movie. Oh man,
I don't know.
I wish it's so popular. Someone in the chat help me out. You guys are
I
gonna
thought
know
you were
what
say
I'm
like
talking about.
like
Ghost in the Shell?
Transmetropolitan.
Ghost in the Shell, right?
Oh, okay.
Good call, Sylv.
Thank you. But we have like manga has it, Western comics has it, and I correct myself because it's all comics.
Yep.
That's the dumbest part of this whole thing, right? It's all comics, and it's frustrating because, yeah, Western comics not in the most amazing spot ever when you're talking about Big Two, Image, and beyond. And there are real problems. I think it's weird that people want to take this opportunity to dunk on the industry rather than talk about like what can we do? What do people want to see?
Yep. Or how can we expand the fan base of comics at large? Because it is all just comics. And if you can find an entryway via manga versus Western comics, then all that means is we've found a new user. We've acquired a new person we brought a new person into the fold, and the community at large has to be ready to be like, hey, this is the next thing to read. We recommend this versus, oh, we're making a distinction and one is better than the other. And, oh, you're coming in from here. Well, you really should be reading XYZ. Who gives a shit, dude? Like, you have a new reader. Treat them as you would have wanted when you were first coming into the fold as well, because comics, manga can be overwhelming. So just be somebody to recommend and help.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I want this conversation, by the way, to be, I want listener feedback. I want to know how you guys feel about this conversation or debate or whatever. To me, there's nothing to debate. I really don't feel like there's anything to debate. I think we don't see this anywhere else. I don't feel. Like, where else do we see these kinds of conversations? No one, like, are people talking about this when it comes to movies or television or anything else?
I feel like to a degree you'll get people talking about like K-dramas,
Okay.
that are more, I don't know, meaty than, Western TV shows, I guess.
Sure.
Like just Western dramas in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't,
It's just a difference in like it's just a difference in flavor, dude. Yeah, that's all it feels like.
Yeah. And I think what's the debate, what it really wants to focus on is, what we were speaking about the back end. It's not the content people are arguing about. It's the system. One of the massive arguments that everybody says is that manga starts at chapter 1. And for superhero comics you have to weave through 50 million chapter 1s to find the beginning. But that's not a fault of the medium, that's a fault of the systems that we it's a critique on that.
Sure.
It's also just a different way of telling stories. Like I grew up watching soap operas. When I was a little kid, I watched a lot of soap operas. So to me, the idea of a story that doesn't end is not weird. It's
Yeah.
not weird. I don't know when I started watching Days of Our Lives. I have no fucking clue. I don't know who the main characters were when I started, and I don't know who they were when I stopped. I just know that at the time that I was watching it, I enjoyed it, and I don't understand why people are so obsessed with the idea that you can't have these kinds of stories. Why not? Maybe it's not your cup of tea, but I don't see what the problem is that Batman's story doesn't end. I'm into it, and when I have kids. And if I would love it, I would love nothing more than for my children to become comics readers and start with Miles Morales, Peter Parker, Batman, and Superman, and Wonder Woman. Nothing would make me happier. The same way I did.
Yeah.
I'm into it.
In the case of soap operas, having to do, I have to watch so many now, and I've done a ton of research into them, and things that the characters reference, to me that feels like ancient history, only happened like last year.
Sure.
So it's like, there are certain things that are like, the Kree Skrull War, nobody knows about that, nobody cares about that, but it's going to get, eventually somebody might stumble upon it and read it again, later on, or use it again, and it'll be relevant. Like, it's there to be used because it's already out there.
Right. It's a story. It's a story that exists. And it will exist in perpetuity because Marvel's never going to stop publishing it, and then maybe there'll be a movie about it, and then it'll explode huge again. This is all what comics are. This is all what they've been. And I'm not saying it's a perfect system. We know it's not perfect. There's a lot of problems with it. But I don't know. I don't feel like inherently it's wrong for the big two to keep these character stories going in perpetuity. I want to read a comment from Sanji. Quote, I'd say the comic book formula kind of sucks. Superheroes are the big American comics, right? But no one cares to read the 10 different stories of a superhero. It's overwhelming and feels redundant. I would say that's a personal, feeling, right? Like, clearly there are a lot of people who don't feel that way. The number of people who don't feel that way, unfortunately, is not as high as we would like it to be. But this is an industry that has done this way. What we're 50 years deep?
More. If that. Yeah. It's why you have
we're pushing 100.
Yeah, like in terms of the direct market, we're talking about 40 to 50 years of the same kind of storytelling. And it's worked for a lot of people. That doesn't mean that there aren't changes that can be made. But when you have an industry run by dinosaurs whose only, basis for what comics should be is the comics that they grew up on, of course they're going to keep doing the same thing that they saw.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the interesting pieces of conversation that was happening around this was like on cost, I guess, efficiencies, where manga is smaller in size, different kind of paper weight, black and white, and so it makes it more easily not reproducible, but it makes it more easy to distribute because it brings costs down. And I think there's at least for Western comics, there's an attachment to color because it adds a lot of vibrancy. When you think of that, you think of like Jack Kirby and just an explosion there into that. I wonder if you're able to introduce some of that thinking of black and white, different kind of paper stock, in order to be able to help with spreading and making comics a bit cheaper and a bit more accessible. Like Pals Pulls this past week, we even talked about, we were glad that one of the books that had come out was only like $5.99 or $4.99, whatever it might be, because had it been more, we would not have felt as if it would have been as of more value. And I think that's a really important part of the conversation that I think American comics can take in part from manga.
It's interesting because I feel that the lessons that we can learn from manga are sometimes tough to apply to the industry that we have. You brought up colors. There will never come a time where American audiences will accept a lack of color in their books. It's not going to happen. You can have a Walking Dead. You can absolutely have a Walking Dead. But you can't have the whole of DC's mainline books. I don't even think you could have the majority or 20% or any sizable amount be that way. It's just a cultural difference in what we want out of our books. And I think that, that does increase the pipeline of how long it takes to make a comic. And guess what? The conversation no one wants to have, we talk about it all the time in American books, creators being underpaid. But from what I've heard, in manga, that's a huge issue that goes unspoken. These people are working like slaves to get these books out.
The Berserk guy died at the table. Like,
oh, shit.
Yeah.
What?
Like drawing shit, like plotting out whatever, just
that's awful.
And it's like to the extent where I think that, but also crediting artists is another big thing, because usually you'll have like a team, right, who will maybe lay out flats or stuff behind, like backgrounds, and then you just have the mangaka kind of doing the upfront work, some of the character work and stuff. But none of those people get mentioned. So I can only imagine they get paid for work and not for royalty in perpetuity afterwards.
Wow.
Because it's just, hey, I just need you to draw this really, really detailed background, because I'm not going to do it. You are, and I'll come in, finish up whatever I need to, and then that's it.
And that's how a ton of manga creators get started.
Yep. Being those background guys.
Yeah.
It's a different industry with different expectations on the audiences. Like if we heard about a creator who died working on their book, let's for example, Clayton Cowles. I'm convinced Clayton Cowles is a slave to Marvel and DC Comics, right? I'm convinced he's in a basement somewhere, chained. He only works. If Clayton Cowles died, right, lettering Tom King's next 12-issue epic, right, we'd see a massive outcry. There would be huge changes and things that would get talked about. People would be really, really mad if Clayton Cowles died working on a Tom King comic book.
Who's gonna letter, bro? Like,
right.
Like, half the books out being published right now are not gonna have a letterer.
And now the whole industry collapses because Clayton Cowles is gone now.
Poor Clayton Cowles.
It's a very, very different culture.
Yeah. Yeah, Sil pointed out that Japan also has a ton of unhealthy work attitudes towards work in general that are slowly starting to change. I don't know, from my white guy point of view perspective.
You guys there's so many good comments. I'm really enjoying this conversation. And by the way, if we disagree with you, this is just a conversation. There's no malice or anger. Sanji makes a good point. Manga has something called Shonen Jump, where all the stories for the week will be put into one booklet for $10 or $15. This is something that I have always felt would be good for Marvel or DC to adopt. And in fact, it's not that crazy of an idea that they could, because I think, based on what I know about the way comics were done before I was born, you had a lot of things like Marvel 2-in-1, for example. Even now you get these anthology stories where it's like, here's this really big story written by a creator you really want to read a story from, and then several other smaller stories from creators who are maybe lesser known, who are trying to make their bones, right? So I like stuff like that. I think stuff like that is smart. Stuff where it's like, oh, here's Marvel 2-in-1. Here's a Captain America story, and then we're also giving you a story about, I don't know, a character who's lesser known with a lesser known creative team. Or you can even do where it's like, hey, here's random books. X-Men #1, Avengers #1, She-Hulk #1, and Miles #1, right? All in one package. And you can buy that at a reduced price from what it would have cost you to buy them all individually, and you get a sampler. That's what Shonen Jump is. Shonen Jump is essentially a sampler. I used to read it every month when I was a kid.
There used to be in the UK, and I'm not sure if there still is. There used to be magazines like that with sort of random selections. You could follow bits and pieces of storylines. I think they have like, you know, the main ones that would sort of continue in a month, but then they'd have, you know, bits and pieces of every interesting thing, you know, number ones, old issues, you know, and that's exactly what you're describing.
I mean, that's the what is it? House of Secrets, House of Mystery, like wherever Swamp Thing first popped up, like you had smaller stories therein, but of different characters. Detective Comics, right? That was the whole thing. It was a put out a different swath of books before Batman popped off on one of them, and from there spun out into its own thing. Like all of that was the way to get people to read because yeah, it helped on production costs. It got more story out there, bang for your buck.
By the way, you guys are so sweet telling people to hit the like button on YouTube. Really appreciate that. And I agree. You should hit the like button if you're watching. If you're enjoying, that would be really helpful. Yeah. And it's worth pointing out, right, in fairness, that DC tried to do literally exactly what we're talking about not that long ago with the Walmart books. And guess what? The market rejected them. The market rejected them. So what can you do? Not that it was perfect. Go ahead.
Was it not well received?
We talked about this on the show recently where Dan Didio talked about that initiative, the Walmart initiative. Right, and he said that it actually wasn't even worth Walmart doing it because the price was too low. Because in a store, everything you see is basically ad space. And if the product can't sustain itself by paying for that ad space, you know, hey, we could have this $5, you know, DC sampler, right, that some people will pick up. Or in that same place, we could put a toy section of DC toys where every single toy is $15 or more.
Yep.
And Dan said it just financially it didn't make sense for Walmart to even do it, and they put it in weird places.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and so it ultimately didn't work. I think that the messaging for something like that is probably hard for a Marvel or a DC to pull off because of the conditions of the industry that have existed for so many years. And let's not forget this point: who has the buying power in comics? In Western comics.
Yep.
It's people that don't need that.
Yep. That's exactly what I was going to say, because a big complaint was that everything Sean listed, nobody could find them, but also, you know, they were there to try to activate new comics readers, but the old collectors would just come buy them all, you know, as relics of the variant comics boom. The variant covers boom, and you know, for they would try to get the eBay money off of it.
Right. Exactly. It became just another area for speculation in the industry.
Yep.
And that's something that we talk about on this show a lot, is how the speculators basically drive the market. And when you look at the amount of variant covers that get produced for a random book. I mean, my God, listen to the interview I did with Kyle Starks. He talks about how, you know, even for his DC book that's coming up, which is Peacemaker, and he's an up-and-coming writer. It's not like we're talking about Tom King. For his book Peacemaker, they said, who do you want to do variants for it? He was like, and he's thinking about people he knows that he could probably convince to do a variant off the strength, right? And they're like, well, would you like, I'm just going to throw a name out there because I can't actually remember. Would you like Russell Dauterman? And he's like, well, yeah, but he's not going to do it. And then they're like, okay, cool. And then down the road, there's a Russell Dauterman variant that he didn't ask for because they have the ability to pay these artists big money to do these variants. Why? Because they know that is what is going to sell.
Yep.
And the sale of that variant is baked into the production cost of the book. It's baked into what they think the book is going to sell. The variant cover is baked into what they think it's going to sell. That's not good.
Wow, that's interesting.
It's not good. It's not a good sign.
Because then at that point, at that point, could you argue that because of the variants, they're inflating the price to some degree?
Yeah, dog.
Everything. Yeah, they're inflating the amount of production. They're inflating the price. They're inflating the sales when they represent the sales. Those are inflated because it's variants. We do not know. The comics industry is the only industry, in my opinion, that does not actually know the amount of people that read or engage with the product, because you cannot tell. If I buy 2 copies of the new Peacemaker book that's coming out, and I buy the Russell Dauterman cover that doesn't actually exist, and I buy the main cover, that's 2 sales. I'm one person. What if I buy 7?
Yep.
Well, yeah, right, yeah. Well, for them, who cares? Because they're just looking at the volume.
Right. But then what if I bought those 7 thinking that the Russell Dauterman's going to sell for $300, right? And then it doesn't. And then I say, wow, I just invested all this money in these variants that aren't selling. I'm never doing that again. So I was 7 people. I bought 7 comics. Now I'm gone.
Yep.
Right? So how often is that happening?
Or you were never there as a reader.
Exactly.
Right? So you get a misappropriation of how many people are interested in the book, and you're like, oh, Peacemaker's crushing, and hopefully for Kyle's sake, like, it's gonna do well. But like, of the amount of people who will buy just for the variant, you're also not getting a good read on who cares about the book.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's, bro, draw the line at $2.99, bro.
It's a major problem that, isn't going away anytime soon. I want to tell a quick story. Peach Momoko. You guys obviously know her.
Oh, yeah.
She does tremendous work. Tremendous variant covers. Probably the hottest variant artist in the industry. She wanted to do, on Sunday at New York Comic Con this past year, 2022, she wanted to do basically for her fans, I believe the number was $20, but it was a very cheap number, whatever it was. For her.
50.
50?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
She wanted to do $50 sketches for her audience, for her fans. And so they said, line up, and, whenever she's at her table, whenever she's ready, she'll get that started. So the line starts to fill up before, like, at 8 a.m., like, right when, you guys know the show's not even on at that time.
Yeah.
At 8 a.m. Who's inside New York Comic Con at 8 a.m.?
Vendors.
Exactly. And so her husband says, hey, listen, this is actually just for fans. We're not even started the line yet. This is not what this is for. It causes a whole argument and beef to the point where Peach Momoko leaves Comic-Con and stops offering that deal, and probably will never offer it again.
Damn,
She
dude.
probably shouldn't. Like, I thought I read that there was a fight in line too. Like,
There was, yeah.
There
between
was.
like an actual fan and a vendor.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was a lot of problems. It was a big problem.
Yo, we got the tea at New York Comic Con.
We really did. It was a lot of fun. I felt like Rich Johnson from Bleeding Cool. People telling us shit. Yeah, go
Get
ahead.
news in the bathroom stall.
To Plan 3 Kingdom, to his point, says Hawk Girl #1 is about to sell crazy, and not because people want to read it.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's gonna be the first Hawk
That's
Girl
why-
book, and that's the value that it brings, not the story.
That's why they do so many #1s.
Yeah. Yep.
We have a problem in this industry that's not going away, and it has nothing to do with manga. It has nothing at all to do with the manga industry or competition from them. They both can exist. They both have existed. It's not a problem. This is not a war. The only problem is our own industry and how it deals with itself and how it welcomes in new readership. How many people in our community, right, like the Comics Pals community, have left essentially the primary way that you buy comics, which is going to the bookstore? How many people have exited that because of some douchebag who runs the comic book store and doesn't want to sell them a Miles Morales book because he's black, or tells them, don't buy DC. DC books suck because they have a vendetta against DC for what DC did 3 years ago at the start of the pandemic. Are you fucking kidding me? We have an industry run by children.
Spiteful people.
Middlemen. We have an industry run by middlemen.
That thing that Bandidio said about the store owners being the ones that actually control what you read.
Yep.
It blew me away.
Yeah, it's insane. The comic collector says comics aren't even close to ever competing with manga. I mean, look, I don't know if I would use the word ever because things happen in cycles, right? Ebbs and flows occur. But I would say that as an industry, comics has a lot of problems that preclude it from growing that manga doesn't have. Manga has an easy pipeline for people. Anime turns on a lot of people to the manga. We don't have that same thing working in comics. The movies don't. Yeah. The movies don't drive people to the stores in droves the way people might think it does. We know that for a fact. You might see a little bit of a bump on,
a number one. You see it a lot in trades. Yes, I will say that. You see the bump in trades after a big movie comes out. But week to week comic sales, no. And then if you're dumb enough to say, hey, I want to go to the comic shop now that I saw Infinity War and it was so cool and knocked my socks off, I want to go to the comic shop and see like what more I can find with these characters. And you go in and the manager's like, I'm not going to sell you. You don't need that. You should look at DC instead. Marvel's too woke. DC, you should read that. And then you leave the store. But even then, say you get your hands on a copy of Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet, whatever. By the way, you'll have to pick one, and maybe that's the one you're looking for. It's a completely different story. It's a completely different book with completely different characters and a completely different focus.
Oh, man. You're absolutely right. I'm laughing because To Plan Kingdom said, and then you buy Infinity Warps, which I remember that stupid shit. And I don't think I bought a single copy of that. That was the one where, like, if I remember correctly, they took, like, 2 characters and fused them together or something like that. So it's like Doctor Strange and Iron Man fusion or something like that. I think that's the one.
What?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, just bad ideas. If you guys want to find, because there's so many comments, like it's unbelievable. If you guys want to find a couple more really good ones as we close out this conversation, I think it's a shame. That people seem to be so invested in the downfall of comics. I really do. DC has
celebrating it.
Yeah, DC has tried, and I credit them a lot more than I do Marvel because they've branched out more in the YA market. They tried with Walmart. They've done a lot of things that just simply haven't worked out for a lot of reasons. Up on the screen right now, I have the Wayne family. Well, it's populating, but I have the Wayne Family Adventures that was on Webtoon and is now actually being brought to comics. They're printing it out.
Oh yeah,
it's not just this one. It's 3 different 3 of the Webtoon offerings that they had. They're now going to be putting out. It's the Wayne Family Adventures. It's Vixen NYC. And so they are doing this initiative, which is super cool. And the other one is Zatanna and the Ripper. And they're all coming out and they're all going on sale, and that's great. But it's not enough. It's not enough. I don't know what enough is, but that's not enough.
Yeah. I think this is that as an idea to introduce like a new audience was really cool, right? But that audience is going to stick onto that platform because that is the format that they're comfortable with, right? And so that's not going to translate into, oh, cool, I read this here, now I want to buy it in print, because those are two different audiences. One who reads only digitally on webtoons, which is a whole different experience for
Right.
that. So I wonder even how they're going to translate that into a comic, because you need to fill out panels, not swipe through instances.
Exactly. Right. It's not even the same. It's not even the same delivery system. It's not. You're not.
Yes.
That's not. Publishing this Wayne Family Adventures is nice, but it's not meeting the needs of manga readers or webtoon readers. But again, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do it. I don't think DC or Marvel know how to do it. And I also think that at the end of the day, people who want to read superhero comics know they exist. They know how to get them if they want them. But there's something about this industry that is not activating readers. Dan Didio said 2 generations of comics readers lost. Lost. I say 3. How do we make that up?
You know who knows? Our lost hero. The one that's been missing for so long. We ridiculed him, but frankly, he should come back. He can bridge the gap between comics and manga, and he can,
Oh God.
he can save the industry. Guys, we gotta find Akira Yoshida.
Only he can help solve this crisis.
But you know what? Go ahead.
Fine.
You're making a joke, but I am a little bit surprised that see, now I want to say that. I'm a little surprised that CB Cebulski
Yeah.
hasn't done oh my God. I'm never gonna say that other name on this podcast again. Now that I know that Gail Simone listens,
Oh yeah.
I
Shit.
am.
Gail.
It is surprising to me that CP Cebulski, who does have a lot of know-how about Japanese culture and that side of the industry, that he hasn't sort of tried more. And maybe it's not up to him, but to bridge that gap, I'm surprised that hasn't happened.
That unification, man.
Yeah. I have a question, and it's tangentially related, but not wholly. When I was in comic book school in 2013-14, and right around that time and after, even in the time we started doing this, I feel like there was people who were into comics had this deep, passionate love for comics and talking about comics and talking about the format of comics and the medium of comics and what comics did and how they work. And I was thinking about this recently because I've sort of been transitioning into TV writing and film writing and screenwriting and podcast writing. All this is scripted, by the way. You guys you listeners might not know that, but I feel like no one is doing that anymore. I don't know if it's that if it's that the love is gone or maybe the love has changed. Maybe the pandemic beat it out of us. I just found that interesting.
Wait, no one is doing what?
No one is really talking about comics in the way they were in 2013-14. In that there was this real passionate crowd dissecting comics, and you could find scripts super easy and figure out what people were doing, and people just loved comics. I'm not saying the comics are the fans are gone, but there's this I don't know, this passion that feels like it's changed.
Those years were when I started becoming like an activated weekly reader, because that was just as New 52 was like ramping up, like right after 2011. Um,
So it
and
started, yeah.
and that's when like I entered that market from just looking back and reading like going through classics like Dark Knight Returns or All Star Superman, but like focusing on uh, going to the store more often. Like that's when I became that activated reader. So I don't know if it was because of that larger initiative that was surrounding the comics conversation at the time. I don't know that there's one now because with the fall of 5G, maybe this new wave of DC stuff that's been coming at the dawn of DC books. Maybe that's if it hits, maybe that it will entice those kinds of people again. Maybe it might reactivate people or activate people who are interested and have been interested but haven't picked up a weekly. And I think that's where that might be.
Yeah, I agree, Kale. I think that there is a I think bitterness is a great word. I think there's a lot of bitterness, and I think there are a lot of frustrated people. I think a lot of people who, might have loved a certain book or a certain concept, DCU, whatever it was,
That's right.
that took chances on books like Prez and others, Omega Men, who are upset that that level of risk is hardly taken. That level of providing a different style. Like, look, I didn't like DCU. That was not for me. But I will not sit on this show and deny that a lot of people did love what was happening at that time. And that's not happening anymore. Look at what was the biggest success? Batgirl at Burnside, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a huge success. People
Yeah.
to this day, I mean, like that's sort of like the defining Batgirl now. And where's the DNA of that? You would think you get something good, you run with it. Maybe you could parlay that into Batgirl as one of the premier DC characters and not Harley Quinn. But DC saw all that and they said, whatever. We'll do Harley Quinn 5 times in film, and in that same time span, give you 0 Batgirl. In fact, we'll cancel the Batgirl.
Get it back for tax return. Get that budget.
Yeah. I also think that was also like the early days of the movies. So, people were still excited about Marvel and the possibilities of everything.
Comic Boom has been bringing up a good point about
Yes.
cost.
Yeah.
That was also one of the big initiatives was draw the line at 299, right? And since then it has only inflated in cost. He has a point in chat, comics are simply too expensive. And who is to say that comics should not become extinct? Video games and other forms of entertainment are better and cheaper. Like we've talked about, the bang for your buck. You buy a $6, $5 comic book, you read it for 15 minutes and that's it, right? That is the experience and that was your cost therein. But I think to his other point here, passion is tied to cost. Like I can love a thing, but if I don't have the ability to invest into it, then I have to decide whether or not it is enough of a priority to want to spend the extra money there on that, or just something else, man. And I think it's a good point to bring up is that inflation of cost is also prohibitive.
Well, I refer back to Dan Didio. Dan Didio said, hey, we know who our audience is. We know it very well. We have created this audience. And so if we're going to keep a book at $2.99 and we're playing to the same audience regardless, why would we sell that same audience a book at $2.99? We could sell them that same book at $3.99. The exact same people are going to buy it. And if we lose a few people along the way, that extra dollar is making up for the loss. And he said that was the strategy. But what happens when you keep raising the price and alienating more people? Now you're selling a $100 comic to 10 people. to make the same amount of money you were making by selling the $2.99 comic to however many.
Yeah.
And you just keep shrinking and shrinking and shrinking your audience. Now, I agree that the cost of comics is prohibitive for a lot of people.
Out of control.
But I would also argue, how does the comics industry sustain itself if the price stays low? You have to pay the writer, artist, colorist, letterer, editor, and then who else knows all the mechanisms, right? Off that same $2.99, $3.99.
Yeah.
And
Their
they-
wages
Right.
their wages ain't going up either.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's not even like Marvel and DC, like, in my mind, right? It's not even like they're trying to increase their profits, because they can't. For everybody to eat, right? For everybody who works on the book and the company to eat off of the sale of an individual comic, it probably needs to be more than $5 for everybody to be happy. But how can you do that? And that's why so many creators have jumped ship, and now they're working for themselves, or they're doing Substack, because you get more of that dollar.
If they're still in the industry.
Right. Yeah, they might even be diversifying. How many creators say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing books now, or I'm doing television"? What's Grant Morrison doing? Not comics.
Yep.
Although
Brian
they
Edward-
are coming back for the multiversity thing, but
Brian Edward Hill, yeah.
writing Power Rangers movies.
He's the one that inspired me to branch out.
It's insane. Look, I don't want this to be a whole doom and gloom conversation. Obviously, we've talked about a lot of the problems of the industry. I'll never stop reading comics. As long as there are comics to be read, I'll be reading them. And I suspect that a lot of the people that read comics are feeling that same way, because otherwise, why the hell are you here? You know, the same thing people say about creators, which is you gotta love it to do it, because it ain't for the money. I feel the same way as a fan. I read it because I love it. I would not be happy just going to the movies and watching them, or watching the shows and not keeping up with the stories in the books. I wouldn't. To me, it's the greatest form of entertainment. I love nothing more than comics. But does the industry have a tremendous problem? Yes, it does. And one final point that I want people to know. Comics in the West isn't even just the big two, Image, any of that. What's the best-selling comic book? Dogman. So
Hey, yo.
do kids read comics? Yes, they sure fucking do. And my biggest hope for this industry is that Marvel and DC, or someone else, figures out how to take a 12-year-old who loves Dogman and turn them into a comics reader for life. That's it.
Yep. And to an earlier point, DC has been making strides in that YA audience because they understand that, right? That is an immediately large addressable market that will then lock somebody in long term.
Yeah, exactly. And all it takes is one. For me, it started with the TV shows, and then I got a random comic, and I was like, well, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is one. Thank you guys for being so great during that conversation. So many comments. Really appreciate it. If you enjoyed that conversation, do make sure that you hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Leave us a follow or a subscription wherever you're at. On Twitch, you can give us your Twitch Prime subscription, which is free for you, and it puts a few dollars in our pocket, so we do always appreciate that. We have a lot of show to do today. A lot of show, and we burned an hour on this conversation. So
Good combo.
yeah, very great conversation. I'm glad we had it. We have had quite a week. We've had quite a week at the Comics Pals. So, for those of you who don't know, we hit 1,000 subscribers on YouTube as of Wednesday.
Wow.
It's many years in the making. Some would argue it took too long. But over the last 2 years, we've seen an incredible amount of growth. The last year. Yeah, not even 2 years. The last year, we've seen a tremendous amount of growth. It's all thanks to you guys. It's thanks to, obviously our hard work as well. But you guys supporting us, showing up for the live stream, showing up in the chat, Patreon support, just everything, top to bottom, has been so incredible. and we really appreciate it. I see the congratulations. Thank you so much. It means a lot. Whether you've been with us for all 5 years or 6 years or whatever it is, or you're new in the last week, I don't care. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. We have so much more to come. You guys know we're interviewing Jeff Johns again on April 1st. It's not a joke. That is really happening.
Yep.
Not an April Fool's.
Just happens to be on the 1st.
Yeah. We are
The only joke is that we played it that way, and that's just how it happened. It was a joke on us, really.
the truth on my part is I couldn't wait. I didn't want to wait the extra week. I didn't want to. I just Junkyard Joe finishes that week. It felt perfect, and that's what we're gonna do. So, we do have that coming on the horizon. It's gonna be a big interview, big celebration for us. And we want you guys to be a part of it as much as possible. We are running the Jeff Johns giveaway, the Geiger giveaway. If you want to partake, all you have to do is be a subscriber on YouTube, a follower on Twitch, submit a question to us for Jeff Johns in any way, anywhere you can. The best place to do it for our purposes is to email us at thecomicspals@gmail.com. We will enter the names of everybody who submits a question or comment for Jeff that is respectful into a randomizer. The person whose name comes out of that is the winner of the Geiger trade. We will send that to you. It should be possible for us to send to anybody who is in any part of the world, because we're just going to order it on Amazon or whatever and send it right to your door. Or maybe we'll order it from a local shop that has that capacity, just so that we're not going through the evil empire of Amazon. But that's the plan. That's the goal. So if you want to partake, hit our line, send us a message. We'll get that taken care of.
Yeah, and check out our tweet in case you missed the rules for that. It's all laid out there. It's pinned, so in case you need further clarity, it's there.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's One Piece. There's another piece.
One Piece.
What?
Not that. There's as many issues of One Piece as we have subscribers.
Yo, word. Probably more.
I think we might have beaten One Piece actually by now.
Did we beat One Piece?
I think we might have.
Oh wow!
If only recently hit 1,000.
Well, that's a huge because we blew right past 1,000 like that day and over the last
That
few
day,
days.
yeah.
Gail Simone, who I love. I'm assuming, Kale, you're also a fan. Marco, I don't know your familiarity.
Who?
Right. Gail Simone overnight tweeted about us that she enjoys our show. And that led to several more follows, several more subscriptions on YouTube and Twitch. So it's really incredible to see all the support and love that we're starting to get. When I think about when I think about when we started this, right? And we weren't live, we weren't anything. We're getting a few listens here or there, and we're talking into the void pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Black hole.
Exactly. For us to get real-time reaction to every single thing we do is just remarkable.
It's nuts.
Seeing that tweet come through. So I was playing Mario Kart yesterday. It's a drinking game related to Mario Kart, and that thing popped up on my screen. I'm like, oh damn, I'm fucked up. What?
I'm hallucinating a tweet right now.
I was like, what? And then I had to I'm like, oh shit, that was real.
Dude, I woke up to that shit. I was like, what the hell
me
is
too.
going on? That's
Yeah, me too.
It's crazy.
Dan Trudeau accurately points out this is the first monetized episode of the Comics Pals.
There it is.
That's pretty cool. Although, again, beyond monetization, we've been supported by you guys on Patreon, and that feels incredible. Atomic Hound says more subscribers than issues of Action Comics. That is wild.
Whoa.
That's wild. I love that. And that's true, and I just hope that never changes.
Detective too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hell yeah, we're outpacing those books. Eat that, DC Comics.
We're more popular than Superman and Batman.
Facts.
Wow.
Yeah, that's completely true. Putting it out there right now. There's another milestone that we hit. Tyler said it right on Thursday because
Ye-
Yeah,
I
You
think
say
so.
it out loud?
I thought he said it on the show.
Probably.
Well, we hit 1,000 on TikTok as well, which was huge for us. We had a super viral video, the clip of us talking about the pro registration, like who in DC would be pro reg. That shit went viral. We got 80,000 views on TikTok, and it led to us getting over the hump over there too. So just an incredible week, and we're kind of like gushing about ourselves, but you know, how often do you hit so many milestones back to back? It feels good. So
Not for nothing, too. Tyler won't do it, but I want to sing his praises because that TikTok business is all him.
yeah.
We have tried between the three of us and previously between the five of us, we have tried so hard to make ourselves get into social media and do it. And then Tyler came on and my man said, yeah, no sweat. I got it.
He's literally like, "Hey, can I do a thing?" Yes.
Dude, will it get us eyeballs? Don't care.
You guys have heard me, you know, rag on Tyler on this show, but you know, I could do a whole podcast episode about how much I love Tyler. So, you know, it's never personal. And what Tyler has done, this means more to me than a lot of other things in my life. And what Tyler has done to revitalize this is incredible. So I'll never be
Change the game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll never be
change the
anything
game.
less than thankful.
King.
100%. Where's the You listen, I have champagne. I have champagne. Should I pop a bottle?
Do I have champagne?
Got champagne. Should I pop a bottle? Should we take a break and grab some champagne real quick? Listen, not this second.
Yeah,
We're in the
yeah,
middle of not this
Yeah,
second.
yeah.
Quickly, I owe a backflip.
Oh,
Now, it's not going to happen this week. However, because I was supposed to go visit the set of a soap opera this week, that's not going to happen. But next week, I will have a backflip.
yo, Catherine stars full caps. You do.
I will have a backflip. I will not be here.
And you will be here. There will be a backflip. I want it. I want it.
Well,
The listeners want it.
That wasn't that wasn't really an either or. It was I will have a backflip or I won't be here.
Oh. Listen, you do have to schedule a backflip. How many people in this fucking community could just bust a backflip out of nowhere?
Not me.
Not me. I don't even think I could get my body to agree to do it, let alone like actually complete it successfully.
That's the part I'm still working on.
Yeah. Sanji says Tyler winning Comics Pal of the Year for 2023. Listen, I just wanted to get myself over. We're not going to do it again, okay? I don't need anybody else winning that award. No, I'm just kidding. I would have voted for Tyler if we could have voted. So I agree with you. We've got a lot more show to do. I wanna extend a little bit more thanks to those of you on Patreon. Patreon.com/thecomicspals is the absolute best way to support the show for as little as $3 a month, which is less. You can get. It's less than what, Kale?
This copy of John York's Into the Woods, which has changed my screenwriting life. It talks about the 5-act structure, and it's fundamentally made me a better writer. It is $9.99 in the Great British Pound currency, which frankly is too much.
Yo, I love that he just ready for that. That was so good.
He caught me on Thursday, and I was mad about it.
You can get access to our newsletter. You can get access to voting in the book club poll that goes up every single month. We are going to be doing Far Sector, actually, as a result of the book club poll. That's what you guys voted for, so we'll be doing N.K. Jemison's DC standout book, Far Sector. You also get a nickname and a shout-out on this very podcast, so I do want to say thank you to Thunderstruck, Rebecca Alejandro, The Night Stalker, Harris Nijinsky, Brian Demolisher Del Pozo, Random Rocio, Kefis the Incorruptible, The Great Destroyer, Hyper Viper 89, Momentum Mike Elliott, Starcross Catherine Stars, The Hound of Justice Atomic Hound, Dan The Truth Trudeau, and Joel Justice. Thank you all so much. You are phenomenal. Appreciate you being our pals. We've got a merch store if you want to buy Comics Pals merch. We're selling shirts. We're selling mugs. We've got bomber jackets. We're selling bras. We've got socks. We've got everything. We've got stickers. You could put not magnets, but like stickers of us up.
I think
on your
we do
fridge.
have magnets.
We do have magnets. I need a
Do have
magnet.
magnets.
I think
Yeah,
so.
we got
Yeah.
magnets. Yep.
Yeah.
I need a Marco's Muckhole magnet. How about that?
Yo, same. I ordered a sticker.
Sick.
Put that
Yeah.
on my toilet.
Yeah. So we've got a lot on offer. If you want to watch this show live, you can do that on Twitch and YouTube every single Saturday at 10:15 a.m. Eastern. Watch Pals Pulls. That's our comics review show every single Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We've got some listener questions. So I want to run through those real fast before we get into the news. And we are doing Twilight of the Superheroes, Alan Moore's greatest superhero story never told. We are on part 3 of our deep dive. Today we're going to be looking a little bit further into the different houses that we talked about last week. We've got more houses to talk about. And maybe you've been wondering, where's Batman? We haven't talked about Batman. So we will be talking about Alan Moore's plans for Batman in Twilight of the Superheroes today. And I promised we would have images. And I have at least an image to show
Yeah.
you guys of an artist
Excited.
rendition. Not just any artist, but a collaborator of Alan Moore. Of
Oh, that's right.
what they thought some of these characters might look like. So it is one image. I don't want to get your hopes too high, but it's an image that features a few characters. So you will get a little bit of an idea. So but here are the listener questions. First up from Joel Justice. This was actually a PM to me, a private message to me. So hopefully, Joel, you don't mind me reading this, but I felt like it was a generic enough question that it could fit the show. Why do you think the comic book industry finds it hard to be representative of people and innovative? And what do you think is the most innovative thing the comic book industry has done since you've started the podcast? For context, Joel's been listening to older episodes of our show, and we talked a lot back then about a lack of diversity and innovation and, how stagnant things felt. And he's asking what has changed in the comics industry since we started. And I actually have an answer for that. And I'll give mine while you guys think a little bit, because obviously you two have been here since the start as well. In my opinion, the biggest thing that I can say, first of all, I think the industry is still stagnant in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I don't think the industry is tremendously different in positive ways since we started this show. I will say, thanks to CB Cebulski, there's a lot more overseas representation at Marvel. There's definitely a lot more Asian representation. I think the fact that Marvel appears to have, I mean this in an affectionate sense, a stranglehold on Peach Momoko art and work is a direct result of CB Cebulski's involvement and position as editor-in-chief. And I think that there are a lot of other creators that are there under CB that wouldn't be under someone else. So I think diversity has improved at Marvel specifically. I also think we see more women in prominent roles. When we started this podcast, you didn't necessarily have the Teenie Howards of the world. You didn't necessarily have the Leia Williams of the world writing prominent books at a Marvel or a DC. So I'm really happy about that. We've also kicked out a lot of trash because Eddie Berganza's gone. And Eddie Berganza is, allegedly a sex pest and a predator who kept women out of certain areas of DC Comics editorially. Editorially speaking, women were not allowed to pass through the Superman books, which was a springboard typically into bigger projects. So we lost maybe a generation or more's worth of women in comics on an editorial standpoint, but you got to figure more women in editorial spaces would hire more women, right? Not because of any agenda, just because they would have their scope would be wider, and so that didn't happen. So I think the industry has become a lot more friendly to diverse voices. I also think we've seen initiatives to try to diversify the readership. DC's done a lot of YA stuff that has had success. We've seen the Marvel Voices books, the DC Pride books. That's a lot of new initiatives on their part. All that's wonderful, and I'm very happy about it all. We're not where we need to be. We're not as progressive as I wish we were. The Luke Cage City on Fire thing was a huge blow, I thought. And I think we're still letting the wrong people make decisions and flex their buying power. And we're not doing enough to move away from that. The last thing I'll say is just it's been beautiful to see how much Kickstarter has helped the industry.
Yep.
So many books that get kickstarted that wouldn't have, books that wouldn't have found a home. I think that's been tremendous as well. Those are all positive. One negative I wanted to point out that I forgot about, Comixology being gone. Big negative. As much as I don't read digital, no Comixology, bad for the industry.
Yeah, that's a big one. In the time that we've done the show, there was a massive Comixology boom, and now it's just crumbled away.
Yeah.
So that's a massive negative in that time. One thing I wanted to shout out was the recent distribution shakeups with DC and starting their own distribution companies, as well as Marvel and several other companies shifting to bigger distribution platforms, Penguin Random House, and others. I think that's huge. I think that it will be. I guess my hope is that will be good for comic book stores in the long run, but I think even just for the medium, I think that'll be good to get more stuff in bookstores where normal people will go and find it.
Yeah, completely agreed.
Dang, those were going to be my 2 points.
More Swamp Thing comics exist now.
Let's go! Right here. It's right here next to me at all times.
Wow.
Not even a good one.
Yeah, not even a good one, Yeah. Posters and shit all over. Damn, you took the exact ones I was going to call out. I don't think I have one.
All right.
Actually, no. Webtoons exploding, I think, has been really, really good for DC. That ties into some of the expansion pieces that the return of things like Milestone, to whatever varying degree, I think is also a step towards the right direction. I know that DC had previously mentioned wanting to go prioritize digital, and they have in some ways on the app. They have the app, which I think functions really well. That has sort of led to a split between Marvel Unlimited and now the DCU app. But I think it's a good transition, and the prioritizing of certain comics on that, like certain partnerships, Fortnite, just to get within that gaming audience, whatever, FaZe Clan, like those kinds of things, at the very least speaks to them trying something different, and I can appreciate that to whatever varying degree of success that actually pulls people in further into the industry versus it being, oh, this is a fun sort of one-off and we're kind of doing it just for visibility. That's fine. You get that awareness, and that never hurts. Yeah, I think otherwise everything you guys laid out is exactly the growth of the industry over the past few years, and I think from here on it'll continue to grow. I'm ever hopeful, ever optimistic, and so I only foresee further success and further inclusion, further diversity, and ideally with stuff like the Image workforce, what is it, they have their
union,
their union. Hopefully that is also something that plays out over the next couple of years that will improve the lives of this isn't directly related to writers, but those people who work within within the companies themselves. So at the very least, that is a step in the right direction to where ultimately writers and artists can be that or can do that.
Sure. Yeah, I think those. Yeah, everything we laid out is pretty much the breadth of how the industry has changed and grown and evolved for good and bad, I guess. And hopefully, the next time we talk about this, we can talk about more positive. Let's move on to the next one. We had a lot of comments about the Twilight of the superheroes. And I wanted to read just one from Dan Trudeau because I thought it was very interesting. So Dan said, "This is an interesting series to look into, but I'm very glad no one followed through on it. Alan Moore is on my Rushmore of writers, but an unfortunate aspect of his legacy is the idea that these characters are gods. That idea has poisoned the well at DC for a generation. Superheroes are adventure hero characters, not divine beings. They represent the best aspects of us, however you define that. The idea is that they help humanity move forward, not drive us back into feudal kingdoms. Sure, in real life we'd come to depend on them, but they don't live in the real world. I know Alan Moore doesn't buy into that idea, and he was able to create some great comics built around this skepticism. Best to leave the DC heroes with creators who embrace what they stand for. The main thing is the idea that of DC heroes as Greek gods shows not only a misreading of both story types, hero tales and divine dramas, but has led to ponderous, pretentious stories that have dragged on these characters since the 80s. Again, especially with Superman." Do you have a thought on that, Marco?
I know that Dan doesn't agree with the like mythology aspect of DC. I think I side with Grant on that kind of thing. It is the American mythology. It fits the grandiose nature of the characters for me. That's the way that I perceive them, and so I think it works well for the sake of this story. But I think to Dan's point, you don't have to make it that, and you can fit those smaller interpersonal things, interpersonal stories, to stuff that we've seen recently with like Superman, with Philip Kennedy Johnson. Like he's telling tender stories, and he's being very deliberate about the character in the character's honesty or goodwill, and I think that plays into a lot of what Dan says here. Is it's an adventure book, and it doesn't have that feeling that he is this overwhelming force or this unstoppable power. He is just a kind person who has these powers and displays them when needed. I still think back to that panel where he's pulling that kid out of the car. He's like, "Hey, dude, like you're the inspiration. You're the hero here. I'm just helping out." Like that still knocks my socks off.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with the point that Dan's making, only in the sense that I don't think that every iteration or every interpretation of these characters should be, coming from the place of skepticism or, anything like that. But I think what Alan Moore was trying to accomplish was really to give these characters an endpoint, and I think he was trying to send a message to readers. Like, if you want the beginning, middle, and end of Batman, you can get that. It's an answer to everybody who complains about the never-ending stories. That's all it was. And I guess you can quibble about whether or not this should be the final destination for DC's world. And that's why I ultimately don't know that DC would have actually published it, because, Watchmen is its own thing, and that was great, but I don't think that Watchmen exists at all if Batman is Rorschach. Like that, DC wouldn't have let that fly. So I don't know that I think Twilight of the Superheroes would have ever been allowed to exist. I think if it did, it would have caused a lot of problems for DC. But I do think there's a way to edit it and iterate on it that makes it an effective sort of end game for DC's characters. Either way, just something fascinating to look at. I love it.
I also don't this is gonna get probably a little too meta, but I also don't think you necessarily choose your gods. You know,
Right.
you can start it as an adventurer character, but when the guy from the sky that can leap tall buildings in a single bound can now, if you wanted, tear the planet in half. Like, I don't know, man.
Power scaling.
Like, it is what it is. Like,
Right. Like that has to, at some point, you have to deal with that.
and I think even just in terms of buying power, you know, people have put down their money for almost 100 years. Superman and Batman and Spider-Man are what we want to worship, you know? Like,
Yeah.
I don't like I agree in principle that yeah, they should just be adventure heroes, but they're not. Like,
and they are, and they're not. Right. Like
yeah.
that's kind of the
Yeah.
beauty of comics to me is that Tom King can have something to say about Superman that's radically different than what Jeff Johns has to say, and they both get to exist. So, it becomes individual. Something Kale says all the time is about like, the head canon,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
think even though we don't all like consciously do that, I think to some degree you do it. Like you choose which version of these characters that you that are most aspirational for you, or that resonate most, and that's kind of that's your guiding light as far as that character goes. I think that's just how it is. Like you can't tell me shit about Batman if you're not including what Grant Morrison did.
And I think to that headcanon piece, because those two ideas can exist, they both become true. Like they can be the gods that we worship, or they can be the adventure people that we come along for the ride.
Yeah.
And that's the advantage of the comics and continuity and just that format of storytelling.
Exactly.
Either way, you're kneeling at the altar. So
I think you're at that point suckling at the teat of big comics.
You guys want to talk about something that might piss some people off?
Huh?
Well, no, you don't.
no.
All right. Well, then I
right.
guess we won't. We'll just move on. No.
Wow.
No, we're not
Oh.
going to do that.
Every time.
You're toying with our emotions over here.
So this week, everybody's favorite Zack Snyder put out a transmission from Darkseid that you could hear on his Vero platform, where he basically made an announcement that on April 28th through the 30th, something will happen. Darkseid let us know. Thanks, Darkseid. I didn't realize he was a spokesperson. And it appears Zack Snyder is teasing a theatrical window, a theatrical event featuring his DC films, Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and Zack Snyder's Justice League, April 28th, 29th, and 30th. I'm going to tell you right now, I am so excited for the idea that I might be able to sit my ass in a seat for 4 hours and watch Zack Snyder's Justice League again.
Again.
I've seen it twice already.
The black and white one too?
No, I didn't see that one.
Oh, okay.
I'm down.
Hey, yeah, y'all have fun.
And you know what's so funny to me? You know what sucks so much? So I don't know how many of you guys know this, but we got attacked recently for the fact that we're going to have Jeff Johns on the show.
Oh,
And
like, do I even know this?
all those idiots, right? All those fools don't even realize that the host of this podcast is a big ass fan of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I love all that stuff. Attacking me, I'm a supporter.
I'm one of you.
Yeah, the problem with me is that I don't create 57 burner accounts to tell people off on social media. I don't even want to repeat some of the things these people were saying. They're psychotic.
Fuck that shit.
You're just not doing your part.
I guess so. Is anyone other than me excited about this? Am I the only one here?
Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. And also, go ahead.
Man of Steel burned it for me, man. I've been out since day one.
You might notice no Shazam 2 talk on this podcast.
Yo, bro.
And we're not reviewing it.
Marco's Minute.
Oh, did you see it?
I saw it. I saw it last night. I put it in the chat. I fell asleep twice.
Should we give him a minute?
That shit went bad last time.
No, but this time I know what I'm talking about.
This time he's well. I don't. Hold on.
Let's not go that far.
This time he's ready.
All right.
You did kind of spring it on him last time.
Time me.
Do you want the Marco minute?
I want the minute. I want
Marco's minute.
I want the minute.
All right. I'm gonna put the timer on, man. But you better not disappoint because we did it last time, and it just here we go. All right, you're on.
All right. So I had fun with the movie overall. I think what they did with the characters, they used them to some comedic effect, but it wasn't as overwhelming as something within Marvel. I think the storyline was relatively paint by numbers and, a generic villain or trio of villain, but I think it was effective for the story that they were telling. It was about getting to a point where you have to grow up and having to deal with that. And now Shazam having to deal with being alone for the first time, not have his family there because of circumstances in the film. I will say some of the slow talk parts I fell asleep on were a little bit boring, and then the action set piece at the end also fell asleep, just because I'm not a fan of those kind of things. But I think it did what it needed to do. 6.5 out of 10.
Wow. All right. You did well. That was good.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Good job.
I felt that at the end. I'm like, oh, let's get that in.
6.5. That's better than I thought it would be.
Honestly, is it worth the ticket at AMC? Probably not, but at a local theater for $11, I'll pay that.
All right. Well, I won't. I won't pay for that, but I'll damn sure pay to watch any of these Zack Snyder movies again. And
God damn you.
I definitely would and probably will if this is available in New York. I'm going to at least watch, if I can, BVS and Zack Snyder's Justice League. But you know who else is down on DC right now?
Oh, quickly.
Yeah,
Sorry. Quickly. Shazam 2, better than Ant-Man 3?
Yeah. Hard yes.
Can't be that different.
That's I can't even believe that. Now I might have to watch this movie just to critique it against Ant-Man 3.
Right. Have to get Sean's second.
Damn. All I get is
Sean's soapbox.
Yeah,
come on, dude. It's a brand at this point.
Yeah.
But it's got to be time based.
Can't time me. No, I can do it in a minute. We can do a minute.
Oh, believe me, I know.
We can do a minute. Well, someone else who's down on DC right now is Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck has had enough. He will not direct a DC film going forward.
Ugh.
Yes.
Oh no! How terrible.
I don't know, man. That's kind of a loss.
I agree.
Yeah?
Ben Affleck is a very talented director.
Yeah.
The Town, didn't he direct that? I don't remember if he directed it, but he acted in it. He was great.
Argo. Was that? I think there was one, Manchester by the Sea. I think it.
I'm not sure about that. We got the new movie, the Air movie coming out.
Air.
Yeah, it's about how they figured out how to make Michael Jordan the spokesperson of Nike through the show.
Whoa, that sounds cool.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. But he will not be involved in by going forward. So it's a great article by Hollywood Reporter. I think if you're a fan of Ben Affleck, it's worth reading. Written by Rebecca Keegan. And I do want to read just a few quick words from Ben Affleck. Quote, the Justice League experience. The fact that those stories became somewhat repetitive to me and less interesting. Yeah, I did finally figure out how to play that character, Batman. And I nailed it in The Flash. For the 5 minutes I'm in there, it's really great. A lot of it's just tone. You've got to figure out what's your version of the person. Who is the guy that fits what you can do? I tried to fit myself into a Batman. And by the way, I like a lot of the stuff we did, especially in the first one, Batman vs. Superman. Question, but not Justice League. What went wrong there? Quote, Justice League, you could teach a seminar on all the reasons why this is not how to do it. Ranging from productions to bad decisions to horrible personal tragedy and just ending with the most monstrous taste in my mouth. The genius and the silver lining is that Zack Snyder eventually went to AT&T and was like, look, I can get you 4 hours of content. And it's principally just all the slow motion that he shot in black and white. And one day of shooting with me and him, he was like, do you want to come shoot in my backyard? I was like, I think there are unions, Zach. I think we have to make a deal. But I went and did it. And now Zack Snyder's Justice League is my highest rated movie on IMDb. Question. Isn't that because Zack Snyder's fans are so intense online? Answer, quote, say what you want, it's my highest rated career movie. I've never had one that went from nadir to pinnacle. Retroactively, it's a hit. All of a sudden, I was getting congratulated for the bomb I'm in. But I was going to direct Batman, and Justice League made me go, I'm out. I never want to do any of this again. I'm not suited. That was the worst experience I've ever seen in a business with some really shitty experiences. It broke my heart. There was an idea of someone, he's referencing Joss Whedon, coming in like, I'll rescue you, and we'll do 60 days of shooting, and I'll write a whole thing around what you have. I've got the secret. And it wasn't the secret. That was hard. And I started to drink too much. I was back at the hotel in London. It was either that or jump out the window. And I just thought, this isn't the life I want. My kids aren't here. I'm miserable. You want to go to work and find something interesting to hang on to, rather than just wearing a rubber suit. And most of it, you're just standing against the computer screen going, if this nuclear waste gets loose, will ... That's fine. I don't condense that. I don't condescend to that or put it down, but I got to a point where I found it creatively not satisfying. Also, just you're sweaty and exhausted. And I thought, I don't want to participate in this in any way, and I don't want to squander any more of my life, of which I have a limited amount. Question. So if DC came to you now and said, do you want to direct something? Answer. I would not direct something for James Gunn. Absolutely not. I have nothing against James Gunn. Nice guy. Sure, he's going to do a great job. I just wouldn't want to go in and direct in the way they're doing that. I'm not interested in that. Scorched Earth.
Real. Man, what a shame, too.
They turned off one of the biggest actors in Hollywood because Warner Brothers and AT&T and DC suck collectively at making movies. Tell me again how shitty Zack Snyder is and how great the production of Justice League was. You know, I don't think Ben Affleck is one of those drones on Twitter. I don't think he's one of those people. I think he's an honest man who had an experience and he's talking about it. And everyone who was actually on the set seems to feel like Zack and those individuals weren't the problem.
It was the AT&T folk.
Right.
Yeah. Heads at the table there.
Yeah. These people suck. Hopefully, but I hope that the new regime will be better. I really do. And I wish that Ben Affleck could look past all this to work with James Gunn, because I think that'd be great.
Do you foresee a future where, you know, if he decides, this will no longer be that experience for you, like, and not even now, like maybe 5 years from now, where proof of concept has sort of shown itself, he extends the offer. Does he come back?
I don't know, man. Because you got to think it's still, think about the corporate garbage of DC Comics that we know about. Like, the films are just another level of that, which we saw in between Joss Whedon's Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League. He's not going to want to get involved in that again.
But let's say like Gunn, in the same way as like Feige can try to shield to some degree.
I
No.
mean, he's got to do it. And like at this point, I don't have faith that he can.
Mm.
I like James Gunn. I like what he does, but I don't even necessarily think that if Gunn's Superman isn't successful, I think they're gonna drop him like a hat.
Wow.
I like what what have they been doing? Like they're just gonna keep looking for that secret formula that they can't figure out.
And you know what? This is a perfect opportunity for us to shift into talking about James Gunn and Superman Legacy, which he will actually be directing. He officially did announce that, which, you know, we weren't sure about. I think this is the biggest non-surprise of all time. Like, how are you not going to direct it? I don't see a reason for Ben Affleck to come back. I think James Gunn is going to do his absolute damnedest. I think DC would be fools, Warner would be fools, not to continue on, even if the Superman movie doesn't do the numbers they want, because people are going to figure out that all DC's trying to do is reboot until they hit pay dirt. And they're just not going to show up. They have bad will. They have bad will with the audience. Forget about whether you like the Zack Snyder stuff or not. It didn't work with the core audience, and the language around those movies is bad.
Yep.
That's what matters. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. Enough people didn't like it that when you talk about it, it's bad. So that happened, right? And then there's this wave of movies that are like middling. Wonder Woman 2. Most people feel like it wasn't very good. Shazam 2. It's all right, is what I see.
I'll take it, bro. Like,
Yeah.
at this point,
Yeah, sure, of course. But, like, that's not getting the goodwill back for the movies to just be all right. They need gangbusters.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
And then the only movies that people, like, overwhelmingly loved aren't even a part of the fucking universe. Batman and Joker.
Yep. Which is probably the stuff Ben Affleck wants to do.
He wanted to do a Batman. And imagine a Batman, right? Imagine a Batman outside of continuity, so you don't have to worry about any of the crap, by Ben Affleck. That's hot. With him in this suit, I think he's one of the best Batman ever. I'm with it.
On principle, I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the casting of Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne is something DC desperately needed.
I was very against it 10 years ago, and now I wish we had gotten a lot more. But let's talk about this James Gunn announcement. James Gunn said on Twitter, where he breaks all his announcements, quote, "Yes, I am directing Superman Legacy to be released on July 11th, 2025. My brother Matt told me when he saw the release date, he started to cry. I asked him why. He said, 'Dude, it's Dad's birthday.' I hadn't realized. I lost my dad almost 3 years ago. He was my best friend. He didn't understand me as a kid, but he supported my love of comics and my love of film, and I wouldn't be making this movie without him. It has been a long road to this point. I was offered Superman years ago. I initially said no because I didn't have a way in that felt unique and fun and emotional that gave Superman the dignity he deserved. Then a bit less than a year ago, I saw a way in many ways centered around Superman's heritage, how both aristocratic Kryptonian parents and his Kansas former parents inform who he is and the choices he makes." How do you guys feel about him directing? Do you think that's the right decision?
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%.
He's got a great track record as a director. Absolutely.
I also have faith that he's coming into these with good faith and with an understanding, and especially from I personally liked the slate that was revealed. I think the teases that he was doing with regards to Superman, like he's coming from a good starting point with something like All-Star, and if you can try to capture that in film to whatever degree, I'm sold on that because there's a very specific idea about Superman in that book, and you need to try to capture that. I'm on board.
Yeah. I think that this could be. It could be, and I know this is blasphemous, and I'm sure there will be people mad at me saying this. It could be the best Superman movie ever. It's possible.
Won't say no.
Superman needs it.
Yeah.
I think it's crap that we haven't had, a universally enjoyed Superman film since what,
1970.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
40,
insane.
50 years.
Yeah.
That's really weird to think about. I am not the biggest James Gunn fan. I think I like James Gunn more in concept than in reality. I don't care that much for the Guardians films. I thought Suicide Squad was all right. The thing I've enjoyed the most from Gunn is Peacemaker.
Yeah.
I'm still very excited for this because I want it to be good so badly. I want to love it. I love Superman. I never thought I would say that, but over the last year, especially with what Philip Kennedy Johnson's been doing, I've fallen in love, and I want to love this. So I'm hoping for the best.
If we get like a 1-to-1 panel with something from either PKJ's run or from or we get that intro from All Star where 3 panels you explain everything and then you just dive in. If that's the first like 10 seconds of the movie, I'm like, oh, he gets it. Like we're good.
I actually, when you talk about numbers, right? I wonder if this movie, it's going to be fair to even talk about the numbers because of the. Basically what I'm getting at is I'm worried that the Snyder drones, who normally would have been open to watching a Superman movie, are so turned off that they won't go and see it, and that will impact the numbers as far as this movie goes. I guess it's a question of how many Snyder drones are there really, but I wonder about that.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. But I think so much of the normie crowd just like Superman, unattached from all the baggage that we have.
Yeah,
that I think is a Superman film will hit.
I hope so.
I think it'll hit, and if it's a different Superman than what we've seen, which has been dark and gloomy and maybe even a bit cynical, like that is good word of mouth at that point. Like, oh, this was different. This felt different, and that as a baseline to start is, I think, a good conversation piece.
I agree with Gavin in the chat saying that's something that WB just needs to be prepared to overlook. They do have to be prepared to overlook that. WB Discovery has to understand what they inherited. They have to understand it. They inherited a fucking disaster. And they have to look past what might be softer numbers than they would hope. It has to be that way. Zaslav cannot look at maybe softer launch for Superman Legacy and go, time to blow it up again, because that is the death knell of DC, and then they might as well just sell the shit to somebody else.
Yep.
And keep making 90 Day Fiancé and forget about this movie stuff. Please.
Bro, that universe is popping off.
Yep. And by the way, Gavin, good luck on the book you're working on. I'd love to hear what it is. Obviously, can't talk about it, but hopefully you come around and let us know when that's done. Well, let's talk a little bit about Marvel. We don't have a lot of Marvel news this week, but there was a major event, an X-Men event, the X-Men 60 Uncanny Years live virtual event that Marvel hosted for members of Marvel Unlimited. Annual members.
You tuned in?
I sure didn't.
Oh, dang.
I wasn't about to drop $60 on that. I would have only done it for Grant, and I couldn't find a single word of what they said or did throughout the actual live event. I couldn't find anything. I found everything else, nothing on Grant. So if somebody, Atomic Hound was there, I would love to know what did Grant say and do, and was there anything announced regarding Grant's maybe going forward with X-Men or anything of that nature. I don't know that, but let's talk about what I do know. They had this amazing event. So many creators were involved, legacy creators, of course, like, your Chris Claremonts of the world, the Simonsons, Walter and Louise. You had Rob Liefeld a part of it, Jerry Duggan, Jonathan Hickman. Just ran the gamut of every, generation and iteration of the X-Men. There was representation for it. The first big announcement that I want to talk about is the in-person live Hellfire Gala that Marvel will be hosting at San Diego Comic-Con, July 22nd. It's a little confusing. D23 will host the Hellfire Gala at San Diego Comic-Con. So, yeah.
So it's a D23 event at Comic-Con.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And they're encouraging people, fans, to come to this event dressed up as if they were going to the Hellfire Gala.
That was going to be my question.
And even the language of it, I'll read a little bit of it. Quote, promises to outfit the fiercest fashion for the powered-up party of the summer. Quote, dress in superpowered style, fashioning the chicest looks, embellished by their own epic abilities, because, as any Hellfire Gala fan knows, powers are the ultimate accessory. So my hope is that people who go to this figure out unique ways to represent what their power set would be while they look cool as shit.
Ooh, that's pretty cool. Pretty cool.
That's fun.
I was very skeptical about this, but that actually sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm into it. Would you go if you could?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No way.
What? To dress up and just be there?
No.
All right, well.
You know how many people are going to be there? I want no part of that.
What? Oh, well, I like being surrounded by
not me.
individuals.
I don't even like leaving my house.
He's like, you know what? This interaction right now, too close, honestly.
Too much?
Too much.
Marco came in my country and said, and I said, hey, listen, you're reaching. I need you to back off.
I gave him an extra long hug, too.
It was difficult.
Holy shit.
Atomic Hound responded. He said Grant was pre-recorded with Hickman. Grant imitated Cyclops dancing. It was as awkward as it sounds.
What does that even mean? Does Cyclops have a unique dance that Morrison needed to imitate? That's odd.
But no announcements. No work announcements.
Unfortunate. I mean, I guess I'm not surprised by that, and I'm also not necessarily surprised that Morrison might not want to talk about new X-Men because of that experience and how hard it was when Marvel retconned all of Morrison's work on that book. Essentially, that was rough. But so we got the live in person Hellfire Gala. That's going to be super cool. We'll probably do our own thing with that as we do every year, or we did once actually. There's only been two, and we did something for one.
Oh yeah, we skipped the last one.
Yeah, so maybe this time we'll be better prepared, and we can have a whole event around it. For those of you who don't know, in 2021 we had a Hellfire Gala event, and these two and two other people who used to be a part of the show, they dressed up and were in their mutant best for that day. It was a lot of fun. That's not the only thing we got out of this event, because we learned that there would be a huge lead-in to the Fall of X event through the Hellfire Gala. So it's not the actual Hellfire Gala book, Hellfire Gala #1, is not just going to be a showcase of Russell Dauterman and Chris Anka and their ability to make the X characters look sexy and trendy. There's gonna be some deep story stuff that happens in this issue of the Hellfire Gala. This is gonna lead into the Fall of X event. So Jordan D. White, who is basically the head editor of the X line, said, quote, Fall of X is going to be a rough one for the mutants. things have been relatively good for them. I mean, there were issues, but they had their own nation, and now it's going to be dark. They're going to go through some troubles. It will affect the entire mutant line. Indeed, any book that has mutants in it is going to be dark for sure. And so we learned a lot about the fact that there are going to be some problems, fallout from Sins of Sinister. We know about all the Sinisters that exist, and it seems like they're still going to exist. The messaging seems to be that they'll be around after Sins of Sinister. And so we'll see their machinations. I'm kind of disappointed by that. But the other thing is that Apocalypse is coming back, which we know, but we don't know whose side he's going to be on. And so White says that we should look to X-Men Red and the Before the Fall one-shots for the Herald of Apocalypse one-shot for more information on Apocalypse's future.
You know what?
Yeah, go ahead.
Frankly, Apocalypse, burn that shit down and then rebuild it in your image. Like, I like this idea of Sinister took over Krakoa for a hot minute. Now Apocalypse is going to take over Krakoa for a minute before Xavier and potentially a resurrected Magneto regain control or order.
I hope they don't do any kind of mutant versus mutant thing, because this whole arc has been about unity, and I would hate for mutants fighting mutants to be the downfall of Krakoa. Let them face off with Orcus. Let them face off with Sinister, who's not a mutant, or maybe a new threat. But I don't want it to become, Apocalypse is back and he's a villain again, and they've got to fight him. Let's save that for later. We have many years to come of mutant versus mutant action. Let's not do that, in my opinion, right now. We also know that all of that turmoil is going to spin off into the return of Uncanny Avengers. So, for those of you who don't know, after X-Men versus Avengers, which I did not like, we got Rick Remender and John Cassaday's Uncanny Avengers, which was meant to be a book about, well, they were literally called the Unity Squad. It was about the unification of the X-Men and the Avengers through one singular team that could show unity for mutants and humans. That was the idea of the Uncanny Avengers. And so we're going back to that. Jerry Duggan and Javier Garron will be teaming up for this book. It's going to be coming out in August, and we will be getting a preview of it in Free Comic Book Day, Avengers X-Men #1. We know the team. It's going to be Captain America, Rogue, Deadpool, Quicksilver, Psylocke, and Penance, and Captain Krakoa.
Penance.
So wait, there's gonna be Captain America is the only Avenger on the team.
Quicksilver,
Scarlet Witch, I guess.
Scarlet Witch isn't here.
Oh, that's Psylocke. Sorry, I was looking at the picture.
Quicksilver and Deadpool are people who were on Uncanny Avengers before, I believe. Yeah, and Rogue was as well. Rogue was in that initial Uncanny Avengers run. Penance is Monet in this case. Obviously, just a mutant. And when I said Psylocke, I should have said Quanon. So, this is Quanon.
Oh, right.
Yeah, not Betsy.
Betsy
Yeah.
Brant.
Right.
This and Jerry Duggan is doing this one.
Yeah.
It's a pass from me, dog.
Yo.
Instant pass.
Yeah.
Jerry. Oh no, I'm sorry. I need to catch up on the X-Men stuff. I'm a few issues behind.
I mean,
I just I got not spoiled, but I got the ending of the most recent issue spoiled for me, and I said, "No, I'll keep staying away. It's fine. I don't need to know what the X-Men are doing in New York. Like, I don't care that much."
I'm just tired. Like, it's not that I'm tired of the story. It's that, like, Sins of Sinister is sucking up all the air, and I don't really love it. And then the X books feel like they're going nowhere fast. So it's just a weird time right now. Comic Boom says, did Hoxpox ever end? I stopped after the 12 issues when it became apparent it was not a cohesive story. Well, Hoxpox is self-contained in a sense in the 12 issues that you're referencing, and then after that, of course, it's spun out into many, many stories. So if you're referring to the Krakoan era of X-Men, no, that has not ended. And
Right.
I would not disagree that it does not feel... Sorry, that sentence is not great. I agree that it does not feel cohesive, and that it hasn't since Hickman left.
You mean cohesive in the sense that Hoxpox tying into the larger Krakoa stuff now, not that self-contained story.
No, that if Comic Boom is referring to the Krakoan era of mutants, not just Hoxpox, then I would agree that it's not cohesive. I believe that Hoxpox is cohesive and perfect.
And we did a book club on it most recently, so go check it out.
We sure did. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, look, Uncanny Avengers was a great time. Very strong book. But I can't bring myself to care about this particular team. Deadpool, I'm over it. 100% over it. And I feel like Jerry Duggan's Deadpool might grate on me, to be honest. And then a lot of these characters I'm just not that interested in. So this is a weird one.
To Plan 3 Kingdom says, I want to read X-Men again. Last thing I read was X-Men versus Inhumans.
Wow.
Where should I start?
Hoxpox.
Hoxpox. And then if you want to spin out from there, I personally think Wolverine is probably the most consistent book from therein. Benjamin Percy on that. Fire. What else?
I think there's an X book for every flavor of reader.
Yeah.
I think if you like some of the magic stuff, Excalibur was really good, and that's where you're gonna find the majority of Apocalypse's stories there. Core X-Men by Jonathan Hickman was absolutely phenomenal. I defy someone to read that book and tell me you didn't find something good there for you. Whether it's the Brett Booth crazy ass Brood story that knocked my socks off,
Yeah.
or the issue where you had Professor Xavier, Magneto, and Apocalypse in suits talking global politics while my man, what's my man's name? I forgot his name. Was cutting people up. Remember?
Yeah,
my God,
yes.
Gorgon,
yes.
Yeah, where he was just cutting people to shreds. That was one of the best issues of X-Men I have ever read. So,
X-Men number 9, I think.
Dude, if you remember that, that's amazing. So yeah, great stuff. Great stuff. Yeah. X-Men not in the best spot, but I'm always looking forward to more. I can't wait for Sins of Sinister to end.
Yeah, please and thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's just too long. Comic Boom says, I would love to know what happened to Moira in her mysterious 9th or 10th life. We're in her, what are we in? I wish I remembered all that off the top of my head.
We're in the last life, right?
I thought this was the 10th life.
I believe this is the 10th life of Moira.
Well, actually, no, because Sinister has the clones and he's been resetting shit. So, like, isn't that all irrelevant now?
That's something entirely different.
But isn't that all irrelevant?
Isn't what all irrelevant?
Like, now aren't we? Doesn't that technically count as, like, that's her? We're in, like, the 15th or 17th or whatever the fuck life?
No.
I wouldn't look at it that way, because that's not Moira Prime.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay.
As far as Moira Prime goes, I guess we can spoil it. She's depowered right now. She doesn't have powers, so
she's hanging out with Orcus, right?
Yeah, those lives that you're wondering like what the future of those were, that's all in limbo, because as it stands, she's depowered, and the only Moira powers that are out there is what Marco referred to, which is the Moira clones that Sinister has. So
fucking hell. Aaron Ruiz in the YouTube chat says, come on, Sean, give us X of Swords versus Sins of Sinister book club. You want a quick way to see you want to see a quick way to get to see 4 people hang themselves?
Dude. Wow. You know what? Just give me 2 seconds. I'll be right back.
What? What?
He's going to get the book. I'll bet. He's,
Oh, he needs a reason to fucking open that X of Swords
Yeah, that's right.
omnibus. Yeah. You gave it to him. You gave
no,
you
that wasn't me.
not you know, I mean Aaron.
Oh,
Let's go, Sean.
Because I want to show you guys something right now. This
Spicy.
this
There it is.
is
Yeah.
my Ten of Swords omnibus or collection, whatever you want to call it. Thick. Notice something
boy.
about it?
Yeah.
It's in
I-
plastic.
I just said you gave him Aaron gave you a reason to open that shit up now.
No, he didn't. I'm not opening this fucking thing. I'm not opening this. I bought this before this thing even started because Amazon had pre-orders, and I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I'm getting it on the ground floor. It's like $30 or whatever. Maybe it was 50.
That
I
would
don't
be
care.
so good.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, it's gonna be so amazing. And then the shit came after it was over, and I get the delivery, and I'm like, oh my god.
Yo, I forgot about that. That's because you forgot that you had pre-ordered it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and I get this garbage on my doorstep.
Booey, bro.
Sean is a completionist.
Yes.
He will go out and he will get the whole of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men run.
I have
The
it.
the problem with that is that now Sean has the whole of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men run.
I'm so disappointed that I own this. And by the way, just so you know, this is a double dip because I own every single individual issue that's in here.
That's
so I
right.
double dipped on trash. Unreal.
Yo, to Plan 3 Kingdom Onslaught, don't sleep on Onslaught, man. That shit's good. I have all of the individual issues right over here.
Don't. Oh god. We're
Get
gonna
me
get back
started.
to that.
Get me started, bro. Get me started.
Unreal. Oh, all right. Listen, we're gonna dive in to the last bit here, which is going to be the Twilight of the Superheroes. So this is part 3 of our conversation about Alan Moore's greatest superhero comic story that was never told. If you've been following along, then you know that in our first episode, we dove into the why. Why does Alan Moore want to do this? What is it? What are the inspirations? We're talking about things like The Dark Knight Returns. We're talking about things like Secret Wars. We're talking about things like Crisis on Infinite Earths. Things that inspired Alan Moore to want to tell this story. Also, the idea that these characters, these superheroes, need to become mythological, right? To become the American myth. They need a strong beginning, middle, and end. And he said, well, we know the beginning of Batman. DC is intent on never leaving the middle of Batman. And I can't change that. But in Alan Moore's mind, he says, what I can do is provide an end point for the whole of DC, the same way that The Dark Knight Returns was essentially an end point for Batman. And creators can work backwards from this point, and readers will know if they want that concrete answer. How does it end? They can get that. That's what the point of this all was. Last week, we talked about the essential houses. We dove into 2 of the primary houses of superheroes and various characters that will inhabit the world of the Twilight of the Superheroes. And those were, of course, the House of Steel and the House of Thunder. Talked about some really weird things going on with the House of Thunder. Go ahead and listen to the last episode, which are all split out, by the way. And a huge shout out to Arubaro Snake for suggesting that we separate out the Twilight of the Superheroes episodes, deep dives, because those are doing very well for us. And, it's something that I hope people continue to check out. So we're gonna talk on this episode about the rest of the houses. We're going to give you guys some updates on characters who are not necessarily a part of houses, the central location where a lot of the story will take place, what's up with Batman, and as promised, I will show you guys some artwork that was done by a collaborator of Alan Moore that represents a few of the characters that are in Twilight of the Superheroes. So here we go. We're going to start with the House of Titans. I'm sure you can imagine what the House of Titans is or who's in it, but I'm pretty sure you can't imagine what they're doing now. I'll refer to Alan Moore here. Quote, one of the two foremost clans making up this collection of lesser houses is a clan composed of the remains of the Teen Titans, now grown up and a hell of a lot grimmer and more frightening than they ever were in the past. They are led by an adult Nightwing who, trying to emulate and live up to the reputation of the Batman, has become every bit as driven as vicious as his mentor, but who lacks the depth of compassion and understanding that separate the Batman from all the other grim vigilantes. As a result, Nightwing is not an altogether nice character. This isn't helped by the fact that Starfire has been killed some years earlier.
Wait, repeat that?
I said, this isn't helped by the fact that Starfire has been killed some years earlier during a period when all the aliens were being forcibly expelled from Earth by the big powers who feared alien influence moving in to take advantage of the disruption and uncertainty in society. Other Titans who have died include Jericho, while some, including Kid Flash and Wonder Girl, have left the Titans to take up with the other clans, a cause of bitterness among the remaining Titans. So, the Titans represent, in comics, the next wave of heroes, the next step, the mantle passing down, right? These are the would-be main superheroes of the future. If DC Comics, if time actually moved forward in DC Comics and people aged normally and things like that, by now, Batman would have retired. Bruce Wayne, rather, would have retired. Nightwing would either take up the mantle or just be Nightwing. But he would be that Batman, you know? Right. And so on and so forth. Just the same way, like right now in DC, the Titans are going to be the main superhero team. That's what should happen in DC, right? Like that's supposed to be their future. Alan Moore is taking those characters who represent the future and basically saying, yeah, shit didn't go too well for them. And now Nightwing is a jaded, bitter, angry character that has very little to do, in my opinion, with the Nightwing that we all know and love. How does this
big time?
How does this sort of idea make you guys feel?
I hate it.
I don't like it. Yeah.
Especially for Nightwing.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you started that description of his character, I was very much like, ooh, Alan Moore has already lost the plot. That man doesn't know who this character is at all. But I think when you put all those events and just, hit them one by one, domino effect, I think there's a degree of that could make sense.
Like it could work, but I don't like the direction for the character regardless. Like I can see the machinations there, but it feels like a stretch for him.
Yeah. It's hard for me to accept the idea that Nightwing could ever turn. We talked about, would Nightwing be pro-registration or anti or whatever, and I can never see him wavering from just good. Just whatever's good, whatever's best for people, whatever's best for humanity, being a smiling, happy, person for the most part, trying to inspire good.
The heart of DC, right?
In my opinion, yeah.
Yep.
And so to see the main character, what I believe to be the main character of DC, turn heel in this way, it's hard to accept. But unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, Alan Moore doesn't stop there. I will go refer back to Moore's words here. So he talks about Hawk and Dove, and he says that Hawk may be renamed Warhawk and lives up to his name, a sort of super Rambo who Nightwing tends to use as a human weapon.
Jeez.
There is also the Cyborg. Victor Stone has had some rejection problems with his bioelectronic parts in the time that's elapsed since our present day. And as a result, More and more of his body has been replaced by mechanical parts, including one lobe of his brain.
Whoa.
He is forced into considering the frightening question of when exactly something stops being a person and starts being a machine. I think Marco confronts himself with that every day.
Every day, dude.
Quote, how much do you have to take out and replace before there's just a robot left?
That's some more shit right there, dude.
Yeah.
That fascinating. I would love that. And it's interesting because my image of Cyborg is the cartoon, like Teen Titans, and in that he has like part of his brain already, but I'm thinking back, like back then it would have just been, you know, his like little band across the forehead and just like part of his skin or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think so.
We just got our first ever super chat.
Oh
Damn.
shit.
That's so awesome. Thank you, Atomic Hound. He says, first ever super chat. Doesn't feel like Alan Moore wanted to crap on Wolfman and Perez, turn Nightwing, and diminish Crisis. Yes. Yes. In both previous episodes, I talked about how I felt in reading Alan Moore's words on Crisis on Infinite Earths that he did not actually like the event. That he felt that the event hurt DC and that there was a part of him that wanted to undo what was done there. He doesn't explicitly say that. That's what I interpreted. And I do believe that taking these characters specifically and turning them on their heads so radically while also undoing the end of the multiverse was Alan Moore's way of rejecting Crisis on Infinite Earths. I do believe that. Thank you so much for that, Atomic Hound. Really appreciate it. And by the way, you know, this all happened so fast. We didn't get the chance to like set up cool pop-up images or anything like that for super chats, but all that's coming. So stay tuned for that stuff. Thank you. Let me go on because I want to tell you guys about the rest of the Titans because we're not done. One thing that helps take Stone's mind off of his own problems is that he must keep an eye on the Changeling, who has serious problems of his own. When the terrors of the world finally became too much for his hokey, lighthearted facade, the Changeling did what he always said he would do. He went crazy. Not completely crazy, but more and more these days he stays in animal form, or worse, in some awful halfway form between the human and the animal. Worse still, increasingly these days he is starting to adapt the forms of animals that don't exist outside of the increasingly tortured confines of his own mind. Before the story is out, he will have adopted a new identity, calling himself the Chimera.
Oh, what?
That's happened in continuity.
Oh, really?
Somewhere along the line, yeah.
It happened very, very, very recently. In fact, it happened right after Dark Crisis. Remember how in Dark Crisis, I think he gets shot by Deathstroke or something bad happens to him and he's incapacitated? They're able to bring him back, but he stays in animal form because he's traumatized by the events that happened to him.
That's right. It was a backup in one of the issues we read.
It was a backup.
Superman ones, yeah.
Yes.
I think in the Teen Titans book that Jeff Johns did post Infinite Crisis, the Titans are shot to the future somehow or another. No, the future Titans are brought back, is what it is. Okay. And it's like Tim Drake is Batman, and I think they've left. Beast Boy has just decided to stay in animal form, if I'm remembering that correctly.
I like these sort of darker takes. I don't like that Moore is so cynical about the world and how it's playing out with some of these things. Like they're heroes, and I feel like he's at this point now that we're describing the characters and where they're at. This feels like, you know, an extension of Watchmen and his cynicism therein about the world and how it could exist. But I think the Cyborg stuff's interesting. I think he has interesting concepts for the characters. I might disagree with some of them here and there, but I think he's thought them through to a point where it'll benefit his story.
Right.
You got to remember too, this is late 80s.
Right, right.
I mean, that's, prime Thatcher time in England. And he's he's based in a more rural town in the north, I believe, which was like Thatcher would have cut off the north with her own hands if she could have. She would have gnawed it off.
Wow.
Like, she hated the poor and she hated the north. She very famously said she wanted Liverpool to fall off into the sea.
Yo, what?
Like people like Thatcher is nuts.
Wow.
When you really look into like the conservatism there. So, I mean, when you think about like Alan Moore's philosopher king in the YouTube chat says grimdark, that's where a lot of it comes from, is the political commentary, because late 80s Britain was drowning.
Wow. That's good context. And I think, Alan Moore's sort of what we interpret as his like cynicism and skepticism and things like that is clearly as informed by his opinions about people that read comic books and comic book characters as it is his own life experience and what he was dealing with at that time, as Kale points out. So I think all of the context of who Alan Moore is as a person and what he went through and what he's experienced is relevant to discussing Twilight of the Superheroes, because it's all there. It's there in Watchmen too.
So, Sylv mentions that you can see it in the B for Vendetta author's notes and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The last Titan that we need to talk about is Raven.
It's gonna be good, dude. I'm like at the edge of my seat at this point,
because you never know, right?
Yeah, I don't know where they're going.
So I'll refer back to Moore. Raven is now an aging, very dignified sorceress. She stays with the Titans out of loyalty for the way they stayed with her in the past when she had troubles, but increasingly she finds herself drawn to the tempting notion of leaving the House of Titans and moving into one of the other houses, which is far more suited for her. This being the next house on our agenda for discussing, which is the House of Mystery. So I think that's interesting, because I think that Raven continuing to be loyal to the Titans despite not liking where they're going, I would say that probably fits the character.
I think so. Yeah.
Do you feel like that's the only one we've talked about so far where like he actually hit the nail on the head?
Of what is familiar.
Sure. Right.
I think he does pretty well with Changeling and Cyborg as well. Well, and the Starfire death. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
Is Changeling an actual name that Beast Boy goes by?
That was his name before he got into the Titans. Yeah, when he was with Doom Patrol, was Changeling.
Okay, all right. Exposing my lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
I've never proclaimed to be a DC aficionado. I don't mind being wrong or not knowing.
Does getting rid of Starfire feel lazy? Like, I would have liked to see where that plays out as well. Like she's because she's an alien, right? So she would have been part of that wave of how do we now deal with removing a Titan from Earth, knowing that this is like a mandate that has been agreed upon across the board. Like, that's an interesting wrinkle in his own idea, and I wonder if it's not just a way to not have to deal with like talking that through.
What do you mean?
Well, because earlier you said that there was this Earth-wide mandate to remove all aliens from Earth, but she is an alien, but she's still part of the Titans. And if this is now a kingdom, right, it's easier to deal with her having died to affect Nightwing than it is to have her live and have to discuss whether she remains as part of the Titans or if she has to leave and deal with that separation.
My answer to that is that Starfire, the very tension that you're talking about is exactly why she's dead. Because you wouldn't have just been able to expel her from the equation without resistance from the Titans, because she is one. But the other houses are clearly, at least the ones we've talked about so far, much, much more powerful. And this is an agenda that everybody has. So you'll hear more about how this plays out, but you'll notice Superman is also an alien. But ain't nobody take him out of the equation.
Word! Oh shit! Okay, cool. We're cool.
I also think the death of Starfire, like we touched on how like, or I touched on how that would piss Nightwing the fuck off.
Right.
But like you got to think like she, along with Beast Boy, Cyborg, and Raven, like they're the core Titans. Robin has his own things going on. They don't.
Right.
They're their own little clique. So to have her be like the heart of the Titans to an extent, like that crushes a lot of optimism that Starfire really provides. And really drives them to a place where they will fight.
And I think people would, there are people who would say that this is an instance of fridging. I don't have any type of resistance to that argument, although I don't feel like the concept of fridging is always inherently a negative or bad thing. I think, sometimes death is the catalyst of story, or it can move characters forward. In this case, that's what Moore was doing. I don't think he had some agenda against Starfire, although I will say, if you believe that he was frustrated by Crisis on Infinite Earths and how that went, and maybe didn't love the Titans, killing the heart of the team, maybe that was a shot. Who knows?
Revenge.
That's something we can't answer. But that's the House of Titans.
That was cool.
That is the House of Titans. We got more. We got several more. And I'm going to try to run through these because, there's a lot. House of Mystery is up next. So this has nothing to do with the actual, like, the House of Mystery that, existed before. This is just the name. So I'll refer to more now. This House of Mystery is built around Baron Winter's Georgetown mansion and is the residence of a number of DC supernatural characters. These include Jason Blood, aka the Demon, maybe the Spectre, Zatara.
Yeah.
Who's Zatara? Is it Zatanna?
It's Zatanna's father.
Okay.
Right. Oh, he would have died though. Well, regardless, keep going.
Dr. Fate and a strange amalgam of Baron Winter and Deadman. Baron Winter has had his mind burned out. I love that. He had his mind burned out in a psychic battle some years earlier and is now just an empty shell, except when he's inhabited by the spirit of Boston Brand, who uses the Baron's body as a kind of holiday home in the land of the living. The other person in the residence at this new House of Mystery is a reformed Felix Faust. The supernatural presences at the house have very little to do with the outside world and have instead devoted their pooled knowledge and talents to plumbing the depths of the universe's many mysteries, being all but inactive in the world of men.
So for context, Baron in Swamp Thing, both he and Zatara were part of an exorcism that was trying to contain some like larger elemental force, and Zatara bursts into flames, which is why I was confused that he'd be here because he's dead technically. And Baron, there was like some psychic backlash that like just fried him, and he goes brain dead. So that's interesting because that plays into stuff that he has had in the past that he was writing about at that point.
There you go. Okay, great context. That makes sense.
It says his exact background is unknown, except he has an unexplained connection to the early biblical figures Adam and Eve.
Interesting. Baron?
Yeah.
Huh.
And by the way, this the House of Mystery would have been where Raven felt she wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. You think about someone who's been through what Raven has been through in her life. You think about the fact that the Titans are now a shell of what they were. They don't represent what they represented. And she is more powerful than she's ever been in her life. Why would she want to hang around these people when she can hang around these supernatural forces and, you know, figure out what else the universe has to offer? Earth is cooked. It might as well do something different, right? The House of Secrets is up next. This has nothing to do with the former House of Secrets. This is where the villains are at.
No, fuck.
Yeah, this is where the villains are at. And it features Joker, Luthor, Gorilla Grodd, Captain Cold, Catwoman, Kronos, and Star Sapphire.
Oh.
And Dr. Sivana, and maybe a few other people. Moore was not sure exactly who else would be there. But I think when you look at this reminds me of, like, you know, very 80s, like Legion of Doom.
Legion of Doom, that's, yeah.
Those kinds of characters. Moore says the following about this. This house is powerful enough to defend itself against occasional attacks by the other hero-centered clans, but isn't otherwise especially active and thus tends to get left alone, largely because the province that these villains protect, somewhere up in the reaches of Nevada, is just as well looked after as the place controlled by the heroes, whereby hangs some sort of moral. So it's worth pointing out, for those of you who maybe didn't hear the last one, these houses are actually like civilizations unto themselves, in the sense that regular people live there too. Right. And they essentially are, the regular people, the humans, worshippers of these godlike figures. And the heroes take care of these areas in the way that heroes would. And I'm sure they have some kind of, you know, way of, maybe they have some caretakers that they employ or something like that to keep things in order, you know, to keep things looking decent. But there's no world government. There's no, like, governing body of the world or any specific country. It's all superheroes, or in this case, villains. Let's move on to the House of Justice. This is the JLA, or what's left of it, because as you can probably tell, a lot of those characters have splintered off.
Yeah.
The lineup of the Justice League at the time of our story includes Captain Atom and the Blue Beetle, an Aqualad that has grown up to be the new Aquaman, and a Wonder Girl who has taken on the mantle of Wonder Woman after Wonder Woman herself opted out to become Superwoman upon marrying Superman. In addition to this, there is the Flash, Wally West, and the new female Flash, Slipstream. And he says, although I prefer the name Joni Quick, but this is by the by. Joni Quick.
Oh, that's funny.
There's also Captain Comet and a new female Dr. Light. Then you have the House of Tomorrow. This house is essentially the house of the characters who are known to time travel in DC. So the Rip Hunters, and I say Rip Hunters because they're all stuck here. If you remember, the Time Trapper set a trap, which is what trapped Rip Hunter and the Legion of Superheroes. This is where they all decided to, like, hang out together. Jonah Hex is here. Space Ranger's here. They're all trying to figure out how to get the hell out. That's basically what this house is about.
That's funny.
The last,
I don't want to deal with it.
Right? Yeah, like we gotta go. This is nuts.
What was the name of that house?
Oh, this is the House of Tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
The last house we have to talk about is the House of Lanterns. Very interesting stuff going on with the House of Lanterns. So, the Green Lanterns use alien power to protect various sectors of space. There are many Green Lanterns, of course. A handful of those are human beings, especially if you go back to the mid-'80s.
Most of them are human beings at this rate. Am I right?
Sure. Yeah, right. So that would obviously cause some problems when humanity and the other superheroes are trying to remove aliens from the equation. So here's more. The House of Lanterns, at the time our story opens, is abandoned and shattered. since all the Green Lanterns, being self-confessed agents of an alien power, the Guardians, have been banished from Earth during the anti-alien purges mentioned earlier, which resulted in Starfire's death, and which also resulted in the banishment from Earth of the Martian Manhunter, the Hawks, and any other alien characters I might have forgotten. Superman, since his own alien culture no longer exists, and since he has lived on Earth since infancy, has been made a citizen of the United States, and is thus exempt. Anyway, while the House of Lanterns no longer exists upon Earth, an emergency House of Lanterns has been set up on one of the moons of Mars. Here, the exiled Green Lanterns conspire with the other space powers, including the Rons and the Thanagarians, to restore their power on Earth.
Whoa.
The space powers, knowing through their intelligence resources of the imminent joining of the House of Steel and House of Thunder by marriage, are afraid that such a union will enable the Super/Marvel family to bring all the houses under control and unify Earth, as a resourceful planet ruled by a pantheon of invincible gods. The space people fear that such an empire might soon set its sights upon territories that are currently the province of the Hawks, Guardians, or Martians. The actual Green Lanterns residing on the House of Lanterns at this time are a reformed Sinestro, Carol Ferris, and Guy Gardner, Green Lanterns of Earth, Soto Yacht, the Daxamite, quote, ultimate Green Lantern, whose existence I hinted at in the story me and Kevin did for the Green Lantern Corps Annual, and maybe an aging Tomar Ray, just because I'd like to see what parrot men look like when they get old.
Wow.
What we just learned is actually a crux of the story of Twilight of the Superheroes, because it is about these aliens trying to stop, and not just them, other people as well, trying to stop the joining of the two houses, because they fear that could lead to a conquest of space as well as Earth.
That is fascinating. And it makes sense, right? Because like the irony being Green Lanterns as the protectors now protecting from the rest of the sector from this problem planet that they once prioritized.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Wow.
I love
That's
it.
so cool.
I love it. Go ahead.
Sorry, Aaron did ask, sorry if I didn't hear it, but for the story, was there a main character for the book? I think we chat through that in the first piece, but there's no like central POV necessarily, right?
Yeah, the central point of view characters, the characters who we see the story through, are Rip Hunter and Constantine.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, and they're big parts of the framing device, and then this version of the Constantine that lives in the Twilight of the Superheroes era is an older man who meets Rip Hunter, and then tells him, "Hey, man, we gotta stop this. Basically,
Gotta do something about this shit."
Yeah. So now, there are a lot of other relevant characters who have varying degrees of import to the story. I want to talk about Batman really quick. So, this is from Moore's notes. Quote, "Nobody's actually seen him for years. He's rumored to be around, he's rumored to be active, and rumored to be doing something, but nobody knows what or even really if he might have died years ago." I'm not going to say anything more about Batman.
Ugh.
Because that is where we will begin next week when we talk about more of the story, whether or not Batman's alive or dead, what he might be doing if he is alive, and if he's alive, who he might be working with. So lots of questions to answer about that.
Wow.
Damn.
Also next week, we're going to get into, at least I think we're going to get into some of the like real life meta things that were happening when this document was found, which will take us into the 90s,
Okay.
into 90s internet, and how a journalist who is still alive today and who still works in comics today had a major influence over how the story of the Twilight of Superheroes was told. Now, I promised that I would show you guys an image drawn by a more collaborator that represents what some of these characters might have looked like, and so I will do that here in just a moment. This image is drawn by Don Simpson, and this is an image of what the primary members of the House of Thunder might have looked like. And you should be able to see that now. This is by Don Simpson, drawn in '99. And we have
Snazzy. Damn, that's a short ass dress.
I know.
What are you covering with that?
Not a lot. And if there's a breeze, we might be seeing a lot more than we bargained for.
Whoa. Jeez, you talk about her short ass dress. You got Captain Marvel's whole wiener sticking through his.
You ever see the ambiguously gay duo from Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This very much reminds me of that.
Yo.
So we're looking at an image of Captain Marvel, Mary Marvel, and I'm assuming that is Captain Marvel Jr. Not the son of them, but the whatever. What's his real name? Freddie?
Yeah.
Freddie. Yeah, Freddie.
Yeah. He looks like Elvis, right?
I can see that.
That's on purpose.
It is?
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Elvis and Captain Marvel Jr. were like in real history, Elvis was a massive fan of Captain Marvel Jr.
Oh, wow.
And thus, through comics, Captain Marvel Jr. has been made a massive fan of Elvis as time has gone on.
That's so cool.
I did not know that.
Oh, that makes sense in the movie then. They make jokes about it. Oh, okay.
Yeah, they weren't jokes. Baz Luhrmann genuinely tried to make Elvis a superhero style movie in that vein.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And it makes even more sense when you look at this image and you see that Mary Marvel is saying the House of Thunder, also known as Graceland.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty cool.
Yeah. Hound in the chat says they are very 90s rendition.
Yeah.
Very, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
At peak 90s renditions. I would love to know, like, and maybe this is something we can talk about in the future, but like who the artist should have been or could have been, or who would have been the right person to do this story.
Not this guy. Too much wiener.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree at all. But yeah, this is the only thing we really have to go off of. A lot of other artists have done their renditions. I didn't want to share them because a lot of them are people who are just fans that wanted to show off what they thought these characters might have looked like, and I don't want to steal from them or anything like that. And I felt like Don Simpson, at least he had some connection to Alan Moore, so I did like that. Tom Scioli, who is an artist and writer, wrote Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics, actually put up a video on YouTube called Alan Moore's Interminable Ramble, which is what a lot of people refer to this as. And in it, he showcases some of his renditions of what these characters might have looked like. So it's a lot more low to the ground. But if you're interested, that exists. But that's
neat.
Yeah, I love it. I'm so hyped. I think we've got 2 or 3 more of these to go. So 2 or 3 more deep dives into Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes. If you're enjoying it, please do let us know. We appreciate all the feedback that we get on this. If you have questions that you want us to try to answer throughout, send them in because we can deal with that. We can bake those in.
Atomic actually put a question in that got lost in chat, but does this enhance or diminish Alan Moore in terms of legacy? He said question for next week, so maybe we incorporate that.
That's an interesting question. That's actually that's something that's been on my mind in general with this, and something that I kind of wanted to address at the end.
Okay.
Because there are people whose worldview or whose view of Alan Moore is colored by this, even though it never came out, which I do think is unfair. But we'll talk more about that in the future. Thank you guys so much for listening. Before we cut out, if you would make sure you leave a like on the video if you're watching on YouTube. Follow if you haven't. Consider subscribing on Twitch. You can do that with your Amazon Prime / Twitch Prime subscription. Also consider supporting us on Patreon, where for as little as $3 a month, you get access to our newsletter, which each one of us, one a week, one goes out. We also have the ability to vote in book clubs. Anything that we put out, like a book club, comics versus, anything like that, is exclusive to Patreon first. Then it rolls out later on. So you do get early access over there. You get a shout out on the show, as you guys heard earlier, a superhero nickname and a shout out. Direct access to the pals, if that means something to you. And
sneak peeks to stuff like this,
exactly,
as well as content that we are trying out, and a whole new formats of stuff.
There's a whole other side of us you haven't even heard if you've never heard Palling Around.
Oh, that's true.
Our exclusive show over there. So, encouraging you guys to take a look at that if you haven't. If you want to watch this show live, that's Twitch and YouTube every single Saturday at 10:15 a.m. Eastern. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern for Pals Pulls. Listen to my interview with Kyle Starks. Kyle Starks, the writer of I Hate This Place and Where Monsters Lie. I thought it was a great conversation. It's a little over an hour, so give that a listen if you're so inclined. For everything else at the Comics Pals, Gail Simone endorsed Comics Pals, by the way.
Whoa.
That's going on the bio.
Hell yeah. Plugs, Kale.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Comics Pals. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at TotoInTow. That's TOTOINTOW. You can find my work at kaleward.com. That's CALEWARD.com. I got a backflip to do, man. I don't know. Well, terrified. God, I'm scared. Y'all muted?
You mute?
Am I having a
I'm
struggle?
sorry.
No.
I was typing. I think you'll be all right, Kale. And if you're not,
Yeah.
that's content.
And if you're not, live from the hospital.
Yeah.
We've hit 1,000 subscribers. My life has basically been sacrificed to the content gods now. Shit, this makes us YouTubers.
Uh-oh.
Oh man,
Mom.
that.
I don't know about you, but I've been a YouTuber since day one. This is what I've wanted the entire time.
Ugh.
Marco.
You can follow me at Mr. Marco Enomoto on Instagram and Twitter. I've taken a break from One Piece, actually. It finally transitioned to a point where I had to watch on a separate platform because it finished on Netflix, and so I fell off for a hot sec. But otherwise, I've been catching up on reading a lot of poetry and some philosophy here and there. So if you're a fan of I got some Bertrand Russell and then Sam Harris on discussions about like AI and what else has he touched on? And religion. Been my big things. So chat me up if you want to talk about that kind of stuff.
Chat GPTM up.
Chat GPT for me up, because that shit is fire. The new update just released. I haven't played with it yet, but I'm planning on to.
How do you know it's fire?
It's the prompts that people have been putting out, and like the ways to optimize your interface with it has been very cool.
As for me, I am thinking about what's next after Twilight of the Superheroes. Once we've wrapped that up, what do we do next? I don't know. Give us your suggestions. We already got one suggestion that I thought was pretty juicy. I enjoy the test of going back and learning about things that I don't know about and don't have context for, and figuring out if I can share what I'm learning in a way that's compelling. So if you've got something that you think is juicy, that you think I probably don't know about, and maybe I know about it, but I don't know the full story. If you think there's a story worth telling, submit it. Submit it. Maybe we'll do it. Thank you guys. Oh, go ahead, Kale.
Yeah, never mind. I'm not gonna say it out loud. I went, ooh, this will be a great joke. And then I hit like that last word of it and I went, don't do that.
Were you going to accuse me of being a racist like Tyler did on Thursday? Thank you guys so much for listening. Until next week, we're the Comics Pal signing off. Take care, guys.